Okay, hi everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I am Sean. So I did not intend to do this video, but I was in the car today driving into town and I was listening to one of my writing explained videos or whatever, where I was talking about Act 2 of this book, Babylon Dithers, because this is the book I've been working on lately. And so I was listening to my video on BookTube talking about my planning, my outlining for Act 2 of this book, Babylon Dithers, and an idea just kind of came to me, an epiphany. So the way Babylon Dithers goes, just to really quickly sum it up here, Act 1 is about the satire team, which is like this counterterrorism group, is pinned down up here in Mosul. And Trevor Knight arrives in Iraq from Saudi Arabia, and basically the Iranians give him a job to run some weapons to the Kurds. And, I don't really want to go into it very much, but this is all part of him working to free his friends sort of from Mosul. They're pinned down by ISIS. That's Act 1. Act 2 is supposed to be about, sort of two things. One is an attack on the Mosul Dam, which is come on, Google Maps, right there, the Mosul Dam, because ISIS takes over this dam. And this really happened in 2014. ISIS launched an attack on northern Iraq. And one of the things they did is they took over the Mosul Dam here. And if they would have destroyed it, all this water from this lake, this is the Tigris, it would have flooded Iraq with 50 feet of water, just drowning, a million people. That is kind of storyline A of Act 2. And then storyline B was about the Yazidis over here in Sinjar. These are the Sinjar Mountains. And ISIS basically takes over this town and begins doing the genocide against these Yazidi people who are predominantly Christians, namely in the town of Sinjar here. So that's the second storyline of Act 2 of Babylon Dithers. Act 3 was going to take place in Syria, and there were going to be kind of three storylines. The first is there's this fictitious location, Camp Kate, somewhere in Syria, which is right around here somewhere. And this Syrian rebel group unites, and they're backed by Turkey. And so the Syrian rebels kind of unite, and they begin marching down, and they attack Camp Kate. And Trevor happens to be there, and he kind of works to fight them back, but, they don't really win. So Trevor and the people at Camp Kate, they have to go down south. And at Hama, they run into a couple characters named... actually, it's not Schuler Dongan, it's Skylar Dongan. I recently realized I've been mispronouncing that character's name wrong for 15 years. I've always been saying Schuler Dongan, but it's not Schuler, it's Skylar, the way that name is pronounced. There's that guy, Skylar Dongan, and Ariel Geller. They are characters that are first introduced in Ottoman Destiny. Anyway, they are here in Syria working to protect or photograph historical monuments because ISIS is destroying them. And so they go to the town of Palmyra and work to take 3D printing of historical monuments. I think if I can, so those monuments there, those may be destroyed now because ISIS was blowing up all these historical monuments and stuff. So it really pisses me off that they would do that. So Trevor was going to help them in Palmyra. That was the second storyline of Act 3. And then the third storyline was going to be Trevor goes up here to this town of Tabqa. And there's another dam here, right here, if Google Maps comes into resolution. So there's a dam right there. And this is the Euphrates River. And so what happened is they're fighting over this dam, the Kurds and ISIS actually doesn't want this dam to get destroyed. In Act 2, they're actually thinking about destroying the Mosul Dam, ISIS is, because if they destroy the Mosul Dam, it'll wipe out Iraq. So ISIS is considering blowing up that dam. But here with the Tabqa Dam, ISIS does not want that dam to fail, because if it does, all the water will knock out the city of Raqqa. And Raqqa is the Islamic State capital. So sort of the third storyline of Act 3 was going to be Trevor and the Kurds fighting over the Tabqa Dam, and then they were going to have a ceasefire there because they're going to work on repairing the dam. And then it was going to go back to Act 4 in Iraq when Iraq is having a referendum for independence. The Kurds are having a referendum for independence. So I previously talked all about that in a previous video series. So the first video I talked about Act 1. The second video I talked about Act 2 with the Mosul Dam and the genocide around Sinjar. And then I did a third video where I did both Act 3 in Syria and Act 4 here in Iraq with the referendum for the Kurds. And I basically liked the outline I came up with for Act 3 in Syria. I really did not like, though, the outline I came up with for Act 4 because I was really trying to think about how to incorporate this. I kind of decided on her being an Assyrian girl, or an Assyrian woman, I should say. And she was going to meet Trevor, and I couldn't really quite figure out what they were going to do together. And so I just kept trying to figure out, what is Trevor doing with that woman? What role does she have in the plot? And it just really felt forced, and nothing ever really came of her. And so I just, in hindsight or whatever, I just really didn't like that because the outline I came up with, it just wasn't really working out. And then so I just didn't like the outline I came up with for Act 4. So basically, now I have actually been working on writing Babylon Dithers. So these past few weeks, I've actually been working on writing it. I usually don't like talking about word counts, but since I'm in here and you can see, when I started, I previously wrote several chapters of Babylon Dithers a few years ago, and then I quit, and coming back to it now. So I had 12,000 words when I started this draft, when I restarted this draft, the first draft, and now it's up to 29,000 words. So I think I've been working on it for 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, I got it up from 12,000 words to 29,000 words. So that's real nice. And also just yesterday when I wrote this scene here in chapter 9, part of it was written, but then somewhere, early into the second page or whatever, that's all I got. So basically everything after that I want to say everything after the first page, because basically I rewrote it as I went. I revised it. So I really don't know if I kept much of the original chapter, what I wrote, the original page and a half or whatever. But basically everything at this point, chapter 9 on almost, is all new. And also one of these chapters here, so chapter 5, this is about the SAT team. Most of this was completely rewritten. And then chapter 8, this is the first scene where you check in with the SAT team when they're pinned down in this refinery. So this chapter was all new, and I really liked that chapter. Actually, since I guess I'll just quickly mention this. I'll probably mention it in my week in review video. But so far, when I've been working on Babylon Dithers, I've kind of been doubting myself a lot. But when I wrote this chapter, I don't know, maybe it was the previous chapter actually, but I think at least definitely with this one chapter, I really started to feel like I'm getting in a groove, where I talk about in one of my week in review videos how I believe in something that I call the muse, which I kind of believe is like a voice, sort of like a Holy Spirit or divine presence or whatever, hanging over your shoulder, whispering in your ear what the writer should write. So it's not like me writing, it's the muse taking over. And so for this chapter here, I think this is where I actually began to feel that the muse was descending. So the other chapters, I'm kind of forcing it in a way. I feel like it's just me, but here in chapter 8, I really began to feel like the muse was with me. So I was really starting to come up with some stuff that I felt was really good. And then this chapter here, chapter 10, this is all new as well. This is just a scene with Trevor talking with his dad, all brand new stuff that was actually not in the outline at all. This is not really quite relating to the video. I'm just kind of summing something up for you guys. But because all I had originally, don't really pay attention to the chapter numbers because I think they're off now. But originally all I had was, Trevor goes on a weapons delivery, blah, blah, blah. It felt a little abrupt, so I kind of wanted to write something like setting this up. before Trevor goes on this weapons delivery. So that's why I wrote that one chapter or whatever. All this chapter 10, I think. So yeah, that wasn't outlined at all. And I talked about this in my outlining videos, how even though I come up with an outline, I don't strictly follow it. So if I feel like there's a scene I could write, I go ahead and do that, even if it's not something I planned. So yeah, that chapter right here, chapter 10, this was nothing I planned, nothing I thought of, but it's just something I thought of writing on the spot. So I definitely do that if I feel inspiration to. But anyway, this is all just kind of setting up, the work I've been doing on Babylon Dithers. So I've actually been writing it and I've been keeping to my outline. This is actually kind of I'm deleting the outline as I go, but I don't want to delete my whole outline. So down here at the bottom, I actually have the full outline where I don't delete anything. So that way I could see the original outline. But up here at the top, I delete it as I go. So just checking off a chapter. So once I write that chapter, I delete it. So yeah, that way I don't need to scroll down and find chapter 10 or whatever. It's just all right here. So this is the next scene I need to write or whatever. So yeah. Okay, gosh, that was a 10-minute introduction or whatever where I've been talking. So anyway, basically what I was talking about, I was driving into town today and I was listening to my booktube video about the outlining of Act 2, where I'm talking about the, attack on the Mosul Dam and then the Sinjar Christians and all that, this stuff, right here around Sinjar. I always say Sinjar Christians when I mean to say Yazidi Christians. But anyway, while I was listening to that video driving into town, I just kind of got the idea, what if I got rid of my plan for Act 3 instead of having Act 3 in Syria? Because this has kind of been a problem for me when I wrote this, is, Act 1 is about the freeing the team at Mosul. Act 2 is about the Mosul Dam and Sinjar, the Sinjar massacre, and then Act 4 is about the Kurds in Iraq. But then, 3/4 into the book or whatever, a quarter of the book, 1/4 of the book would be set in Syria. Even though this book, Babylon Dithers, is supposed to be about Iraq, 1/4 of the book would take place in Syria. I didn't really like that too much, even though I kind of justified it at the time by saying that, Trevor doesn't know this book is about Iraq. So Trevor wouldn't tell, he meets the Kurds in Act 2 and, they offer to take him into Syria to fight ISIS. And so kind of my original logic was Trevor doesn't know this book, Babylon Dithers, is about, Iraq. So Trevor would have no reason to say oh, yeah, I sympathize with you guys. I'd like to help you out, but I need to stay in Iraq for some, phony baloney reason because the plot demands it, because this book is about Iraq. So I kind of decided when I was outlining that, yeah, Trevor goes ahead and goes into Syria, and then he has the stuff with Camp Kate and then Palmyra and then the Tabqa Dam, and then for Act 4 he goes back to Iraq. Even though I liked the storyline I came up with, I did not really like this idea that 1/4 of the book is set in Syria. But I liked that outline. I liked that act. I did not like Act 4 with the referendum. That I think I just wasn't on the right track. But what happened when I was driving into town is I kind of thought, what if what I planned for Act 3 with Camp Kate, Palmyra, and Tabqa Dam, what if that is actually part of Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged? Because Atlantis Dislodged is the next book, the sequel to this one. Atlantis Dislodged is book 7 in the Trevor Knight series. Babylon Dithers is book 6. And so, yeah, Atlantis Dislodged is set in Israel. But the way that book goes, Act 1, Trevor is actually up here in Syria. This was the plan all along, kind of. Once I began kind of a little bit of brainstorming how Atlantis Dislodged would go. Actually, I started to write Atlantis Dislodged, probably, oh gosh, I don't even remember. Probably sometime around 2009, 2010, whatever. That's when I kind of began plotting Atlantis Dislodged. I'll kind of go off on this little tangent first. But the first Trevor Knight book was actually going to be Colombian Death, and that was kind of set in Portugal, kind of a little bit Brazil, a little bit of Cuba. And yeah, so that was Colombian Death. That was the first book. The second book was going to be Viscous Deception, which is going to be like about a war between the United States and Canada. Book 3, I think, was going to be called Subordinate Dwelling, I believe, which was going to be set in... Oh, no, that was actually a different book. The Italy book was going to be called Venus Descend. And again, I'm not sure about the exact numbers here. I probably have it somewhere. But Atlantis Dislodged was going to be like the 5th or 6th book in the Trevor Knight series. And basically that book, Atlantis Dislodged, it's kind of about from, I think it's Ezekiel 38 or Ezekiel 39, which is talking about the invasion of Gog and Magog, which is sort of like the way it kind of goes. I don't know exactly how to say this. I guess I'll say the way a lot of Christians interpret that, because I don't know exactly how, the Jews interpret it or whatever. But the way Christians interpret it is basically Gog and Magog. I forget exactly who it is, who's Gog and who's Magog. But basically how it's supposed to go is all these countries in the area, Russia, Turkey, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Oman, United Arab Emirates, Yemen, I think Sudan is part of it, Libya, they all invade Israel. And that's kind of talked about in Ezekiel 38 or 39. I could really go off on this for a lot more than that. I don't really want to go too much into that. But yeah, that was kind of going to be the original plan for Atlantis Dislodged, was there's this massive invasion of Israel kind of following, Ezekiel 38 or whatever, Ezekiel 39, I forget which it is. And yeah, so it's going to be kind of my interpretation of that, that happening in the modern day, and that becomes a Trevor Knight book. And so then, a couple years later, I wrote German Derelict, which became the first Trevor Knight book based in Iran. Then I wrote Egyptian Demise, Ottoman Destiny, Arabian Dawn. Am I forgetting a book? German Derelict. Oh, I think Syrian Dander. Did I mention that one? German Derelict, Egyptian Demise, Syrian Dander, Ottoman Destiny, Arabian Dawn. And then book 6 here is Babylon Dithers. And what all these books are doing is setting up basically Atlantis Dislodged. I wasn't quite planning this when I began writing German Derelict. I kind of wrote German Derelict as a prequel to the Trevor Knight series, even though it was actually like the 12th book or 15th book I thought of. But I wrote it as a prequel to the Trevor Knight series, sort of like Trevor Knight's first adventure is kind of what I wrote it as. And it wound up actually being the first Trevor Knight book I published. Then I worked on Egyptian Demise. Then I began working on Syrian Dander. And once I started working on Syrian Dander, I kind of realized, hey, I think what I'm kind of doing is actually setting up Atlantis Dislodged. Because German Derelict, I set up Iran. Egyptian Demise, I set up Egypt. Syrian Dander, I set up Syria. So all these countries are going to wind up invading Israel. So it's kind of a happy coincidence or whatever that, all these books I was focusing on so far, are all leading up to Atlantis Dislodged, the invasion of Israel by all these countries, including Russia up there. So, basically, once I started kind of actually plotting, like realizing I'm building all this up to Atlantis Dislodged, what I thought that book begins with is Trevor is actually up in Syria because he is fighting with the Kurds against ISIS. And he's kind of a famous fighter, like all the ISIS fighters hate Trevor at that point because, he's fighting them so much. And so there's another character called Kate Creed. Oh my gosh, I'm talking way too much about this. I'm so sorry. This is why this video is probably going to be like 3 or 4 hours. I'm sure no one's going to watch it, but oh well. In Ottoman Destiny, Kate Creed, a major character, she has a falling out with Trevor Knight. And so kind of my plan was when I wrote that in Ottoman Destiny, book 4, I was kind of already like aware then that Trevor and Kate would not meet until Atlantis dislodged. And kind of my idea was Trevor was going to be in Syria fighting with the Kurds against ISIS, and Kate was going to have to go into Syria to try to find Trevor and bring him back for some reason. Originally, the reason was going to be that they had a job for him in Israel, and so she wanted to get him back for that job. But now there's actually going to be a different reason than that. So anyway, so I wrote Autumn and Destiny kind of planning for that to happen, Kate has a falling out with Trevor, and then she says, like, I never want to see you again. And then Arabian Dawn, which is set in Saudi Arabia, they don't meet, Trevor and Kate. And so here, when I began writing Babylon Dithers, I thought, since the next book after Babylon Dithers is Atlantis Dislodged, I wanted to set up Atlantis Dislodged. So I wrote in Act 3 how Trevor is actually in Syria helping the Kurds. And it was kind of like setting up why Trevor is in Syria. But then what happens is he goes into Iraq for Act 4 with a referendum, the Kurdish referendum. And then after that referendum kind of fails, sort of, the Kurds tried to go independent, but then the Iraqi military marches up and defeats the Kurds. So, they're not going to go independent. After that point, Trevor goes back to Syria, and that's where Kate, meets him again. So basically, this is actually going to be real fortuitous if my plan here is right. Basically, for Atlantis Dislodged, what I've been thinking is Trevor Knight is not actually going to appear in Atlantis Dislodged. I was kind of considering that Trevor wouldn't even really show up at all in Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged, because I was kind of thinking Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged is going to be kind of like the search for Trevor. Because all these things are happening in Israel, but Trevor's not anywhere close to that. He's up here in Syria fighting ISIS. And so Kate goes up there from Israel to find Trevor and bring him back because there's all this stuff going on in Israel. So I thought Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged was going to be Trevor's nowhere to be seen. They don't know where he is for sure, whatever. So I was thinking Trevor might not even show up until the end of Act 1. But I didn't really like that because it's supposed to be the Trevor Knight series, and he doesn't even show up until Act 2, really, of Atlantis Dislodged, which I plan to be a huge book. I may have to publish it in 2 or 3 volumes because I'm kind of roughly considering that Atlantis Dislodged might wind up being close to 500,000 words or even 1,000,000 words. So 1,500 pages or something like that. 2,000 pages. I don't know. I really have no clue how big it might wind up being, because basically everything I've been doing in the series so far is going to culminate in Atlantis Dislodged. So every character you've met so far, every storyline that I've introduced so far, and more, is all going to take place in that book, Atlantis Dislodged. So, all of the Iranian characters I have, all the Egyptian characters, Turkish characters, Syrian characters, Saudi Arabian characters, Iraqi characters, they're all going to appear in Atlantis Dislodged, along with all new characters. So it's going to be a huge book. So, so I was kind of thinking, Trevor wouldn't even appear until Act 2 of the book, and I didn't like that because Trevor not even appearing until Act 2, and it's a Trevor Knight book. But what I thought today, driving into town, what if Act 3 of what I've been planning for Babylon Dithers is actually part of Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged? So while all that stuff is going on with Israel, whatever's going on, Trevor could be doing his stuff up here in Syria that I planned for Act 3 of Babylon Dithers. So while all that stuff is happening in Israel, in Atlantis Dislodged, Trevor's first going to be doing the thing around Camp Kate, then he's going to go down to Palmyra, then he's going to go to the Tabqa Dam and all that, and then after that, after the Tabqa Dam thing, shortly after that or whatever, I don't know exactly, but then Kate's going to go up there and find him. So yeah, it's not going to be you're not going to see what Trevor's doing at all in Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged, you'll see what he's doing. He's up at Camp Kate, he's down at Palmyra, he's at Tab Kadam. So you could be checking in with Trevor, all along. So I could have a chapter in Israel, then a chapter in Syria with Trevor, a chapter in Israel, a chapter in Syria with Trevor, just go back and forth or whatever, checking in on him. And then eventually Kate will go up to Syria and find him and bring him back down to Israel. So yeah, he's not actually going to go to Israel probably until like Act 2 of Atlantis Dislodged. But at least this way he'll have something to do in Act 1 with Camp Kate and Palmyra and the Tabqa Dam and all that. So basically what I wrote here, everything for Act 3... actually, I don't want to get rid of that part. Everything I wrote for Act 3, really. This is everything, I wrote, Camp Kate, Palmyra, Tabqa Dam, and all that. All of this is not part of Act 3 of Babylon Dithers. It is actually part of Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged. So, right now, let's see. For now, since I don't want to actually... okay, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to copy the original outline because this may not work out. I may not wind up doing this at all, This is sort of a little bit of a test. My idea is if I can outline this well, I might go with this. So I think I copied that. So I could just close that. And then I'm going to open up this other document and bam. So this is sort of, this is a new document. Everything here for Act 3, I'm going to delete that, assuming all that stuff is going to go in Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged. So, right now, Act 3 of Babylon Dithers is gone. So, where we're currently at is, the stuff with a team stranded in Mosul is still on. The stuff with a Mosul Dam is still there. Sinjar is still there. And then the next thing that I have in the outline would be the referendum. Baby. I don't know if you heard that. So yeah, I hope I explained that well enough. If I could kind of summarize it, the reasons I didn't really like this storyline, this act in Babylon Dithers is because 1/4 of the book takes place in Syria, not Iraq, which I don't really like too much because, the book is supposed to feature Iraq, kind of, And I've already had a book set in Syria, so I think it'd kind of feel like, hey, well, why am I talking all about Syria again when I've already done a book in Syria? I didn't like the idea that for Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged, Trevor's not doing anything whatsoever, so this fixes that because now he's going to be doing all that stuff. Basically I already have an outline for him for Act 1. I'm still going to have to probably rewrite it a bit, to make sure it fits with Atlantis Dislodged, whatever. And what's the other thing? Darn it, I thought there was another reason I really liked getting rid of, moving it from Act 3 of Babylon Dithers into Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged, but it's slipping my mind now what I was going to say. I'll probably remember later at some point or whatever. Anyway, so, my mind has been just running with, trying to think of, all the reasons to make this work. So it's kind of like I forget exactly everything I've told you guys in this video, I'm trying to think of the exact order in which to try to say everything to be the most efficient. I feel I'm being really inefficient. But anyway, so yeah, basically just thinking while I was driving into town that all that stuff for Act 3 could actually be Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged. So with that in mind, what happens for Act 3 of Babylon Dithers? Well, instead of coming up with a whole new act, what I thought is basically I already have the stuff I need because in Act 2 of Babylon Dithers, there's kind of two storylines with the Mosul Dam and then with Sinjar. So I think that could just be Act 2 could be the Mosul Dam and Act 3 could be Sinjar, and then Act 4 will be the Kurdish referendum. So instead of coming up with a whole new act here, basically, it's just going to be Act 2 is the Mosul Dam, and Act 3 is going to be Sinjar. I'm pretty sure about that. I did kind of consider that maybe Sinjar could be Act 2 and the Mosul Dam could be Act 3. And there's kind of a few various reasons for that, but also some reasons against it. I guess I'll kind of say like a reason I was thinking of moving it to Act 2 instead, Sinjar to Act 2, is because the thing around Sinjar, there's this genocide going on. That was kind of originally going to be one of the main pretexts for having like the Americans or the international community kind of intervening in Iraq. And because what was going to happen, since I was originally going to have this all, it was all going to take place in Act 2, basically, the Americans have withdrawn from Iraq, the American military. And so now ISIS is attacking all these towns and stuff, and the Americans aren't there to help. And so what was going to happen was, Trevor is going to go to Sinjar to like photograph it, that the massacres are going on there. And that was going to help get the international community to want to intervene in Iraq because of the genocide against the Yazidis. That's really dubbing it down. I mean, there was also the stuff with the Mosul Dam going on, but it was kind of those two things. But, the Sinjar massacre was kind of like the final straw, which was going to get like the Americans and stuff to intervene and begin bombing ISIS. So the Americans see that there's this genocide going on in Sinjar. So they begin attacking ISIS in Iraq. And what was going to happen was the Mosul Dam was going to be like the first phase, because they have to liberate this Mosul Dam before ISIS blows it up. And so the Americans were going to help with that. And then the Kurds and stuff were going to move from the Mosul Dam to Sinjar to rescue the Yazidis. And they were going to do that with American help. And so again, a reason why the Americans would intervene, why the international community was going to intervene, was because they were aware of the stuff going on at Sinjar. But if I don't have the stuff with Sinjar until the third act of the book, that would take place after all the stuff in Mosul. You understand? So if the stuff around Sinjar doesn't happen until Act 3, why would the Americans intervene in Act 2 to fight ISIS, So it was kind of be the pretext is that the reason the Americans intervene is because they see all this stuff going on in Sinjar. So they begin bombing the Kurds here around the Mosul Dam. I mean, not the Kurds, they bomb ISIS. So the Americans are bombing ISIS and they liberate, the Mosul Dam, and then they fight their way west to Sinjar, the Americans and the Kurds and all that, But, if I move Sinjar to Act 3, I'm not going to be able to have that. So I was kind of thinking that maybe Sinjar should happen first. All the stuff around Sinjar should happen in Act 2, and then the Mosul Dam could be Act 3. But kind of the main reason I don't like that is because ISIS kind of controls all the territory here between Sinjar and the Mosul Dam and all that. So it's kind of like, how would the Kurds get to Sinjar? How would the Kurds rescue the Yazidi Christians and all that if they don't have a pathway there? So that's why I wanted to have them take the Mosul Dam, then they take this town Zumar and Talafar, and they work their way to Sinjar. So they need to go, one by one, Mosul Dam, Zumar, Talafar, to get to Sinjar. So yeah, I don't think I could do it in the reverse, where in Act 2, there's all this stuff about Sinjar. So I think Act 2 has to be about the Mosul Dam, and then Act 3 will be about Sinjar. So I don't really like this initially, because here for Act 2, I was actually going to be kind of mixing it up, because there's those two storylines, the Mosul Dam stuff and then the Sinjar stuff. like this is the original outline, but this chapter here was going to be a Yazidi storyline. This is kind of more of, well, that's a little bit of both, but, it talks about both Sinjar and the Mosul Dam. The Yazidi girl, so that's more about that. The Mosul Dam, it's a chapter about that. Chapter about Mosul, chapter about the Yazidis, and then William Barrett, which I don't want to get to right now, Sinjar Mountains. And yeah, so it's going to kind of jump back and forth between the Sinjar storyline and the Mosul storyline, which I kind of like that. I kind of like, both things going on at once. But now that I also think about it, a reason I kind of didn't like this original outline, this is something I'm just realizing now. Something I didn't like about this is you basically had this scene in Sinjar happen there, then there's a scene in Sinjar there, and there's a scene in Sinjar there. And so you have these several scenes happening in Sinjar while Trevor is not doing anything even remotely close to that. So I think like with the first scene in Sinjar, he would have been like around I think it's actually pronounced Erbil here. So you have the scene with this Yazidi girl, and then you cut to Trevor, and he's way over here in Erbil. And then the next time you meet that Yazidi girl or whatever, then Trevor's like north. I think he's in this town, Babira, not the one with the A. There's one with an H here. This is kind of funny. It's Babira with an H and then Babira without an H. I think that's kind of funny. So yeah, then, the second scene with the girl, Trevor's here in Babira. And then the third chapter after her, he's up here probably somewhere around the Mosul Dam or whatever. So I was kind of not liking that I was having all those scenes with the Yazidi girl and Trevor's nowhere close to her. I mean, he's, 100 miles away or 200 miles away or whatever. So I didn't really like that because I thought readers may think, why am I reading about this Yazidi girl when Trevor's nowhere close to her? So thinking about it now, I like that I can actually separate these because now I won't have it where I have a scene with the Yazidi girl and Trevor's just over here in Erbil or Mosul Dam just doing his own thing, It could be much more streamlined. Everything for Act 3 could be centered around, the Yazidis. And everything, all the scenes with Trevor actually relate with Trevor working to get to Sinjar. So, I could have a Yazidi chapter and then like a chapter of Trevor and Zumar, a Yazidi chapter in Sinjar, and then Trevor's, working his way to Talafar. So with each scene with her, you see he is getting closer. He is fighting his way to her to help her. Whereas before what I originally had was I'd have a scene in Sinjar and then I'd have Trevor just doing his own sort of thing around here. He's not necessarily working to get to her. So it kind of felt like, what's the purpose of her storyline? It's not really clear too much originally. So I kind of like that now that I think about it, that was kind of a problem I had with it. I don't know exactly how to arrange this. I guess just the first step I'll do is get rid of all the specifically Yazidi scenes or whatever. So let's just go like that and go like that. I'm not going to worry about the numbering at all yet. So the numbering may be really screwy for a while. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to like show you guys every single me moving every little, should I show you guys? I guess I should. I don't know. It's going to be real hard though to talk, while doing this because I can't really just, I can't really multitask that well. Let's see. This is just sort of a test chapter or whatever. So just to like make things easier, just to cut down on stuff. I am thinking about working on Act 4, but I don't really want to deal with that right now. So for now, I think I'm just going to cut Act 4 just so I don't have to like keep, scrolling through it and trying to find stuff. So older Yazidi girl. So right now I'm just trying to get all the Yazidi chapters moved to, Act 3. let's see here. There's a scene with Heidi. I just thought I saw her. Maybe it's right here. I may, some of this may, wind up going in Act 2 or whatever, but, this is still kind of just, gosh, I feel I'm really being ineloquent and boring. I'm just trying to concentrate. ISIS General Mosul Dam, countries and cast. Okay, this goes in Act 3. Kurds battle against ISIS and retakes Sinjar. That goes there. That goes there. That goes there. So, yeah. Oh, and something I haven't mentioned yet is basically for this book, since I'm kind of aiming for it to be about 20... basically I wanted to be around the whole book to be around 80 chapters. So I'm kind of planning for each act to be 20 chapters. So yeah, that's kind of my, target is 20 chapters per act, just to make the book, roughly 80 chapters is kind of what I'm going for. Is that it? This scene should go. I guess, yeah, that should probably go. I'm just going to throw it right there for now. Okay, yeah, I think this is the thing I was looking for. Trevor flies her to the junior. I'm just going to throw that right there for now. Again, I'm just trying to, move chapters from Act 2 to Act 3 that I know I could move. But this is still being really just, temporary. I really hate losing this chapter because I liked that these things would be happening simultaneously because I have these two ISIS generals. So what was going to happen was one of these ISIS generals was going to attack Zumar, and then he was going to go to the Mosul Dam and fight Trevor, and the other general was going to attack Talafar and then move on Sinjar. So it kind of would show these two generals, these two major storylines. One attacks Zumar and goes to the Mosul Dam to fight Trevor, and the other goes to Talafar and then Sinjar to eventually fight Trevor. But if, I break up these things, I don't want to show those generals split up really, so I'm sorry if you can hear the bell. Nibbler is playing with a bell. But I'm not going to stop him because, he's just playing, so whatever. I'm sorry if that bothers you, if you can hear that bell ringing, but it's just a conure playing with a bell. I don't like deleting any. Oh, I just saw Heidi. Trevor tries to rally military villages, but returns to find Yazidi. Yeah, so that's another chapter that I think can go down here somewhere. Then I'm just going to move this scene to. Oh no, I guess that's fine. I don't know. Okay, I guess something else I'll mention is I also had this storyline with William Barrett, because basically there's this character, William Barrett, who commands a British warship, the HMS Resilient. And in every book, William Barrett appears and has some kind of a naval battle and sinks a ship. And so I had to get William Barrett involved in this book. So what I had was, I guess I'll just go ahead and explain it now. Originally, what I actually outlined was something happens around Gibraltar. I wonder if I wrote it. Oh, I guess I didn't write it. So originally I just had British Special Forces take over an Iranian ship bound for Syria. So what was happening in real life is, there was a ship, an Iranian ship, I don't know exactly which way it was going, but they said it was heading to Syria, but it was hijacked in Gibraltar by the British. So I was kind of curious, how would an Iranian ship be over here in Gibraltar on its way to Syria? Wouldn't it go through the Suez Canal? So that was kind of, mystifying me why it would be in Gibraltar. But what I was kind of realizing, and I thought I put this in the outline that it would be Gibraltar, but I guess I didn't specify Gibraltar to kind of leave myself some wiggle room. What I think will happen is actually, since I think, let me actually check right now, Babylon Dithers, whether you could see Cyprus on the map. I think you can. Let's see. Yeah, so there's Cyprus on the map. If we can zoom in a little bit more. So yeah, there's Cyprus. So you could actually see where that is. So yeah, I think what's going to happen in real life, the British took over that Iranian ship around Gibraltar, but I think I'm going to change it where the British, they do have naval bases here on Cyprus. Like they have one at, I don't know how to pronounce it. I can't see it popping up, or I just don't know where it is, but it's supposed to be right around here somewhere. Oh, maybe right there. I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't know. Delicia. I don't know. But there's this British base there. There's also like a British base I talk about in Ottoman Destiny. I think it's called Episcopocanti. I don't know exactly where. Oh, there it is. Episcopoki Cantonment. There's a British base there. So what I think is going to happen is I'm going to have from either of those locations, the British team will board this Iranian ship, and then in revenge, Iran will board a British ship, maybe, strailing through the Strait of Hormuz, and then William Barrett's going to wind up going up and getting in a naval battle against the Iranians. So that was originally going to happen in Act 2 of Babylon Dithers, but it really has nothing whatsoever to do too much with Babylon Dithers, I think. I mean, I don't think that event really has any bearing on the rest of the plot, like it doesn't affect Trevor at all. And that's kind of okay because a lot of things happen with William Barrett where William Barrett is having his own naval battles and they have really nothing whatsoever to do with Trevor a lot of the time. And so far in the series, Trevor and William Barrett have never actually met. So in the outline, I have some chapters with William Barrett. I was going to say that I was going to consider removing the William Barrett chapters, and I would put basically the William Barrett scene or whatever, the William Barrett chapters, in whichever act is the thinnest, kind of reasoning that, I want to have about 20 chapters per act. Well, if one chapter only winds up having like 10 or 15 acts, that could be the act that has William Barrett in it. Because, William Barrett will have at least like 3 chapters or so. So whichever act is the lightest, the skimmest or whatever, then I could throw William Barrett into that act. But now that I think about it, the stuff with the Yazidis is such a more emotional topic or whatever, because there's all this genocide and stuff going on. So I don't really want to break that emotional sort of momentum or whatever, where I just have this really emotional storyline with the Yazidis and then just cut to this storyline of this British naval officer having these battles that has nothing whatsoever to do with her. And just like I was talking about earlier, where I didn't like how I'd have scenes of that girl, and then Trevor's just over here in Erbil or whatever doing his own thing. I didn't like that. And so just the same way, I wouldn't like having chapters with the girl in Sinjar and then cut to William Barrett, who has nothing whatsoever to do with her. So I think that pretty much tells me I need to keep the William Barrett stuff in Act 2 with the Mosul Dam. So yeah, I'm not going to remove the William Barrett scenes from Act 2. And what I was thinking of doing was take out all the William Barrett scenes and just put them down here somewhere. And so, yeah, then I'd have just the Mosul Dam chapters and then just the Sinjar chapters broken up. And then whichever one is the lightest, whichever act is the lightest, I'd put the William Barrett scenes there. But I don't think I'm going to do that. I think William Barrett will be in Act 2, just because all the stuff with the Mosul Dam, it's not as emotionally whatever as the Sinjar stuff. So I don't want William Barrett interrupting that momentum, that emotional tension or whatever. Okay, so thank you, babe. So I think we're pretty close to being able to actually start writing. let's see. Instead of like trying to rewrite, each chapter or whatever, I'd kind of like, thank you. I'd kind of like to, I don't know. Can I just throw this? Okay, yeah. Yeah, there we go. Maybe. Let's see what happens if I do that. Ah! Why did it do that? Okay, there we go. Thank you, baby. Yeah, basically what I was... Thank you, babe. I don't know if you can hear him. If I try like revising these chapters, I don't know how to say, if I try revising them here, right in the midst of all this, I'll probably get confused or whatever. So I'd rather just kind of start up here fresh with a blank slate. Now, I have to kind of try to reset my brain because I wonder if I can change this. Can I say restart at 1? Yeah, okay, good. Basically, what I want to get at here is, this outline I wrote originally, it worked, or at least I want to say it worked for what I originally had, but it may not work as well for what I want to do now. So, basically, the way Act 1 leaves off is Trevor is up in Erbil, and he is staying at the house of this guy, Firat Malazada. You meet him in Act 1. Trevor's like staying at that guy's house. He's like the commander of the Kurdish special forces in Iraq. And so Trevor's staying at his house. And then Trevor was going to work his way up to Babira, because originally what was going to happen was there's this Yazidi prince guy in Babira, the one with the H. Where is it? There it is. It's so weird to me that Babira and Babira, only one has an H. It's like, why do that? Ooh, actually, now that I think about it, I'd kind of almost like to begin this act in the United States just because it's sort of a shift. I might do that potentially because basically kind of what I want to say is that, when Act 2 begins, if it begins all the way over here in the United States where you have this scene, Tom Marsh meets with John Walters, now a lobbyist, and they agree to begin a campaign to delegitimize the Prime Minister of Iraq. And now that I say about it, now that I say that, I'm not quite sure. Tom Marsh is currently the Secretary of Defense, and I actually plan for him to become the president. He's meeting with this guy, John Walters, who's kind of like a lobbyist sort of guy out of New York. He used to be an American general in Iraq during the Iraq War, but now he's a lobbyist, because the Iraq War is pretty much over. And so John Walters goes to Washington, D.C. to meet with Tom Marsh. They're kind of like, allies. They're both conservatives, and the president is a Democrat. And so they are kind of working on getting rid of this Prime Minister of Iraq because he's kind of pro-Iran. He's a Shia Muslim, the Prime Minister of Iraq. This is all kind of based on real life, or at least, the Prime Minister is a Shia. That's like the real life thing, not like John Walters and all that. So basically, there's this Prime Minister who they want to get rid of because he's kind of pro-Iran, and ISIS is invading the country, and so they think we need to get rid of this Prime Minister because this Prime Minister does not want the American forces to re-enter the country to fight ISIS or whatever. He wants the Americans to stay out. So John Walters and Tom Marsh are kind of thinking, we need to get rid of this Prime Minister and get someone who's more friendly to us, who will support us entering the country. And again, John Walters and Tom Marsh are kind of, conservatives, are kind of war hawks. So they want to basically have a war in Iraq against ISIS. And the president, his name is Buck Ramsey, he's really reluctant about that because one of his big things of his campaign was to get the Americans out of Iraq. So what I was going to say, why I didn't really like starting the act with this is because if I begin the act with these two talking about delegitimizing the prime minister, I think it would give readers the idea that Act 2 is going to be about that. It's going to be about delegitimizing the prime minister, when really that's not like the main focus of the act. The main focus is the Mosul Dam. So I think I probably should begin with ISIS General Number 1 attacks telephone, blah, blah, blah. So Zumar's the one that was, crucial. I guess I don't know exactly how to do this, but I could just say ISIS General, I don't need to do Number 1 anymore. ISIS, I don't need to do General anymore. ISIS attacks Tal Afar. The Kurdish security forces flee the area. Is that enough for one chapter? Because originally I was going to split it up, Now, since originally I was going to have that other stuff, ISIS General Number 2 attacks as Zumar. Oh, actually, I was going to kind of make a mistake here. So it's not Tal Afar, it's Zumar. That could go. Let's see, I wonder if I should actually have that guy attack Tal Afar or not. Because basically I'm going to have this other general attack, Sinjar. So maybe what I'll do is, kind of what I want to say is I think I may still have that potentially where one of the guys is up as Zumar and working his way to the Mosul Dam, and then he sends the other guy to Tal Afar and then to Sinjar. But alternatively, I guess what's holding me up here is I want to have that scene where the Kurdish security forces flee the area. I like that you see them attack Zumar and then the Kurds flee. And then the other guy attacks Tal Afar and the Kurds flee. I like showing that the Kurds keep fleeing from ISIS, but if I have like another storyline or whatever where the other general is attacking Tal Afar and the Kurds flee, well, since I don't want to set up anything about Sinjar yet, I don't want to really, if I have that scene with that general attacking Tal Afar and you see the Kurds flee, which I like showing that the Kurds are fleeing. Basically, since I don't want to do anything with that general and Sinjar at this point, in Act 2, I would basically stop his scenes there. So that would feel really like a, forgotten storyline, where if I had storyline or the first part of the chapter be about the one guy attacking Zumar and the Kurds fleeing, and then the second part of the chapter have the other guy attacking Tal Afar and the Kurds flee, you'd never meet that other guy who attacked Tal Afar until Act 3. So that seems to me like it'd be, a forgotten storyline. Like, well, what was the point of that? You never saw what he did after that. So for that reason, I don't want to have that, storyline here where I was kind of thinking, I like having that. I'd like showing that guy attacking Tal Afar and the Kurds fleeing. But since I can't really use that guy until Act 3, I don't want to have him. Basically, instead of showing like that guy dispatching the guy to Tal Afar, I think maybe what can happen is late into, first I'll say, what I think will happen is basically there's these two senior ISIS commanders, sort of. What I think will happen is they'll both be a Zumar, and then I think both of them could actually, if I have any chapters with them, they could still be together here at the Mosul Dam, but then maybe later into this act, maybe one of them says to the other, hey, go attack Tal Afar and then work your way to Sinjar, rather than like having him send that guy away at the start of the act, because again, then that guy would just disappear, you'd forget about him. So instead, I think it would be better that if toward the end of Act 2, the one commander says to the other, hey, I want you to go and attack Tal Afar and then attack Sinjar. And then the act ends within a chapter or two or whatever. and then we could follow that other general. So yeah, these generals are actually going to stick together. So ISIS attacks Zumar. Actually, I'll just go ahead and write ISIS commanders, just so I remember that both of them are involved here. They attack Zumar. The Kurdish security forces flee the area. Now, that would kind of feel like it'd be a light chapter, because, I mean, how would I really have a full chapter about that? Oh, there's my baby, Nibbler. I don't know. What I'm just trying to say is it just seems like that's a short chapter. I wonder if there's anything else I could add. Kind of what I'm thinking, is there like should I set up any Kurdish characters? I do have, where is it? Meet Trevor staying in. Here is what I was looking at. Trevor's overlooking the Mosul Dam, blah, blah, blah. He looks back to see Kurdish forces arriving. A lieutenant tells him that Ramsey announced blah, blah, blah. That lieutenant could theoretically be this setup here. I don't know, because I don't really like so much setting that up. I mean, it's a possibility. I don't think I'd need to outline that. I guess for now it just doesn't matter. I guess what I'll say is, if by the end of this outlining, if Act 2 is still real thin, if I, whatever, if I'm only at like 10, 15 chapters, whatever, 10, 11, 12 chapters, and I need extra storylines or whatever, then maybe I'll actually decide, like, to set something more up about, maybe I have a Kurdish character in the area. But I don't know. I think it's probably fine for now. Tom Marsh meets with John Walters. I think I don't really quite want that chapter to go yet. So I think we'll probably jump from the ISIS commanders attack Zumar, the Kurdish security forces flee the area. Then I think we could probably just jump right back to Trevor. So we meet Trevor in Erbil, staying at the house of Firat. Trevor can meet or learn about the Malazada family, along with rival families and the current political status of Iraqi Kurdistan. That is all pretty good, so we can slot that into like our new Act 2. Things are happening. Trevor gets word from a Yazidi prince that blah, blah, blah. That about Sanjari and the Musings Dam. So that at least could get moved. I'm not going to worry right now where all this belongs, but I'm just going to throw that into Act 3. And the Mosul Dam. Now, if I have this one chapter that begins the act where they're attacking Zumar, that's way over there. They're going to need some time to get over to the Mosul Dam, the ISIS commanders. So if I have that one chapter in Zumar and the Kurds flee, and then I cut to Trevor, and then I can't really have them say, ISIS has taken over this dam. They probably still need a few hours to get there. So I don't think he'll hear about the dam yet. So maybe he's just staying, with the Malazadas and just meeting them. I don't really want to outline this part too much because, I don't really know at this point exactly who he's going to meet. Maybe you're just going to meet Firat's family in this chapter. I don't know, maybe he'll meet, whatever. I don't want to talk about it too much. But yeah, that's something I could kind of decide more on the spot, is exactly which members of the Malazada family he meets. Since I don't think ISIS is attacking the Mosul Dam yet, I don't think I really need to end this chapter with a cliffhanger as much. So I don't need to have like Trevor gets word about the Mosul Dam and then runs off to do what he can to stop ISIS, I don't think that needs to happen yet. since, like I say, some time needs to pass a little bit, ISIS attacks Zumar, they need to get all the way to the Mosul Dam, and then I have the one chapter with Trevor in Erbil. So wow, Trevor is way over here. ISIS needs some time to get to the Mosul Dam, so I think it would make sense that then I could have the stuff with Tom Marsh. And actually, I could kind of set that up because Trevor can meet or learn about the Malazada family along with the rival families and the current political status of Iraqi Kurdistan. So they could be talking about the Iraqi president, the Iraqi vice president, the Iraqi prime minister, whatever. They could be talking to Trevor about all of that. And so Trevor's learning about how Iraq's politics works. And then that kind of bleeds directly into this scene Tom Marsh meets with John Walters, because these two are going to be talking about the Prime Minister of Iraq. So it jumps from Trevor in Erbil talking with the Malazadas about politics in Iraq, and it jumps straight from there to Tom Marsh and John Walters talking about, politics of Iraq, and they're plotting to get rid of this prime minister. So that really nicely flows one to the other. Tom Marsh meets with John Walters, now a lobbyist, and they agree to begin a campaign to delegitimize the prime minister of Iraq. And if I sound funny, I'm sorry. My voice is just I'm losing my voice. So sorry. If I sound real raspy or whatever, I could probably just I guess I could delete that. Okay, so I just took a little tiny break. I was losing my voice. So Tom Marsh meets with John Walters, now a lobbyist. They begin to delegitimize the Prime Minister of Iraq. I like that. And again, I like it because there's a scene, Trevor talking with the Malazadas about Iraq, and that leads directly into Tom Marsh and John Walters talking about Iraq. This chapter about Babira and the ISIS incursion, I don't think I need that yet. Iraqi general declares that is part of Tom Marsh and John Walters' plot to delegitimize the Prime Minister. Gosh, I'm sorry, I keep losing my voice so quickly. I don't really know why. I guess I have been talking for about an hour or so. I guess it makes sense. So this scene wouldn't need to happen yet. The British, I don't think I'm ready for William Barrett yet, because I don't want to have, the ISIS commanders and then, Trevor and Erbil and then Tom Marsh and then William Barrett, because it's like this whole act is supposed to be leading to the Mosul Dam. So I kind of want to get back to ISIS. But, originally I didn't have anything more about ISIS. You just heard that, ISIS took over the Mosul Dam. And so, you had Trevor going up to talk with the Yazidi prince and all that. So really, originally, I didn't have anything about the Mosul Dam. I guess I gotta show ISIS attacking the Mosul Dam or taking over the Mosul Dam. I don't really want to show them taking hostages at the Mosul Dam, because just in Act 1 I had this scene with the hostages in Mosul, so that would really just start to feel repetitive. Wait a minute, Zumar isn't Gosh, Iraq is so weird. Zumar, and then Babira. Why do they keep having towns named the exact same? I never noticed that. Oh gosh, now where did it go? Oh, there it is. I had to scroll out more. Zumar and Zumar. Gosh, now I kind of want to look around at all the other cities looking for same names and all that. Anyway, I'm getting way too distracted. So, what I was saying is I don't have any chapters about ISIS taking over the Mosul Dam, but I'd probably, I need to show that because all you saw so far was they attack Zumar, and then you had a scene with Trevor, and then it jumped to Tom Marsh and all them, which was the last chapter. So I guess I'd want to show the Mosul Dam, but I wouldn't really know what to show. Although now that I think about it, remember I mentioned that when I had Zumar and the Kurds flee, I mentioned that maybe I have that one character who is, where is it? The lieutenant. So maybe potentially when that one general attacks Zumar and then the Kurds flee, maybe I could have one of the characters actually be, the prospective character is that guy who's going to be the lieutenant. So maybe you see him in Zumar and then he flees. And then so you meet him again here at the Mosul Dam. And again, that guy flees. I don't know. Or it could be a different Kurd entirely. In fact, now that I think about it, I don't think it's anywhere here. It would actually be, oh, Nibbler, my baby, here with my notes of the book. I talk about, current Iraqi president. Then I have these three parties. I wanted to set some of this up in Act 4, where you have all these different Kurdish political parties and they're all kind of fighting against each other. Maybe, I suppose, this, I was going to say lieutenant, but this may not even be that guy. Like the Kurdish commander of whoever's defending Zumar, that guy flees to the Mosul Dam and then he could flee again. That guy could be part of one of these other parties, So there's this main party that the Malazada family belongs to. So maybe this guy who's supposed to defend Zumar and then the Mosul Dam, maybe he's part of a different family, a different political party. Potentially. He could be a Malazada, but the reason I kind of don't like that so much is because then it almost seemed like all Iraqis are just Malazadas. So in Act 1, Trevor meets the Malazada guy, Firat, somewhere down, between Tikrit and Kirkuk. He meets Firat, and then he goes up to Erbil to meet, Firat's family. And then so if I have this other guy in Zumar who's also part of the Malazada family, it'd just be a long ways away. So this should probably be a different Kurdish family. Exactly who this guy is and what role he might have in the book, I do not know. I would figure this is something that more I could decide later on, like if there's a Kurdish family that comes into prominence later in the book, maybe he could be part of that family. Maybe he would appear again in the book later on. I do not know, because this is just something I'm kind of coming up with now. But basically, I'm kind of thinking, since, like I said, the first chapter, ISIS commanders attack Zumar, the Kurdish security forces flee the area. That seems like it'd be a pretty short chapter. But if I had the first scene with the commanders, and then the second scene could be, the Kurdish security officer or whoever he is, the commander, part of some other Kurdish family, not the Malazadas, I could set that guy up. I don't know what role he would have in the book going forward, but just to kind of pad the word count a little bit so the chapter is not too short, that guy, whoever he is, he flees to the Mosul Dam, and you think, okay, he's going to defend the Mosul Dam, but then he just flees again when ISIS attacks. So it's just like, God, this guy is completely useless. So I don't know exactly what role he would have in the book from there, but, maybe he won't really have much of a, plot in the book. Maybe he just, that's all he's done, he flees from Zumar, then he flees from the Mosul Dam. Maybe there is no arc for this character. Maybe there is no storyline for this character. Maybe this is his only role in the book, and he's done after this. I don't know. But yeah, it's something, I don't know. I'm just going to figure for now. So I'll write, probably this would be scene A in the book, and then the Kurdish security forces flee the area. So that would be scene 2, and then I'll just go ahead and write in maybe we can see another Kurdish commander not part of the Malazada. I don't know if that, I think that's how you spell it, family. Yeah, family. And then Tom Marsh meets with blah, blah, blah. So I want to show, ISIS attacks the Mosul Dam, the Kurdish commander from, I'll just go ahead and write chapter 1, even though it wouldn't be chapter 1. It'd actually be probably like chapter 21. Flees the area. So yeah, I don't know if he's going to appear again, but yeah, so now ISIS has control of the Mosul Dam. So now I figure, since you have all these other chapters, Iraqi general, that's for the delegitimizing the prime minister storyline. Then you had the William Barrett storyline. This is part of the William Barrett storyline. But I don't want to have that yet. I think we should jump back to Trevor. So now that ISIS has attacked the Mosul Dam, I figure we need to return to a Trevor chapter. Would it be as simple as Trevor learns about the attack on the Mosul Dam? Gosh, I'm only like a quarter way into Act 2 here, and I'm losing my voice so bad, and it's already like 11 o'clock at night. So I may not film this whole video tonight, because I just don't think my voice will last at all. I'm already struggling. Like every word I say, my voice is just killing me. To you guys, I'd just cut to the next day and hopefully I'd sound a lot better. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to continue tonight. I'm just losing my voice so quickly. Gosh, my voice is so bad, I can't really get out any full sentences. But anyway, I am really losing my voice, so I think I just have to call it a night for now. I am just less and less able to speak. So, yeah, I have to call it for now. I'm so sorry. I'm just losing my voice so much I can't continue. I know no one's going to, watch this video anyway. Mostly I'm just filming it for myself. I really like the name of this town, Sam Hale. That just sounds like such a cool town name, Sam Hale. It just sounds like something out of, Tolkien or something. So anyway, what I'll probably do is, I don't know if I should, brainstorm off camera or not. On the plus side of doing that, you wouldn't have to hear so much of me just, oh gosh, I'm so sorry about my voice. You wouldn't have to hear so much of me just being really unclear about what to do. But on the flip side, I think that's kind of part of the allure of these videos, is you could actually see it come together where, largely you could see for a lot of it how I actually, come up with some of this stuff and how I think, how I, come to the ideas I do. So I don't know. I think I'm going to try to resist the temptation to try to brainstorm, how Trevor, what he does next and all that. So I think I'm just going to leave this whole book alone for the night and just quit talking for 12 hours. So hopefully I can regain my voice. Actually, right now my voice sounds like, oh, nope, there it goes again. So yeah, I just don't have my voice. So anyway, yeah, I'll probably be back tomorrow, but for you guys, it would just be instantaneous. And you can see how much maybe I have my voice tomorrow, because clearly right now it's failing me. I'm so sorry, you guys, I keep losing my voice, even though I know no one's probably going to watch this video except me. But okay, yeah, I just got to pull the plug and just quit. Rest in peace, voice. Hopefully tomorrow I'll have my voice and can continue this video. Okay, that's it for tonight. Okay, here we are, day 2, about 10 hours later. Let's see if my voice works better this time. So we're still on Act 2. Last I wrote was this thing, Trevor learns about the attack on Mosul Dam, which I know needs to happen, but I'm not sure exactly how that happens, because right now Trevor is still in Erbil with the Malazada family. Something I kind of thought overnight is maybe that Kurdish commander guy who's in Zumar and then the Mosul Dam, who's always fleeing, he could make his way to Erbil to report in. But I think it'd be weird if he like went to the Malazada house, like Firat Malazada's house, to report in. Because, I mean, why would you go to someone's house to report in about, if you're a commander, like going to report into your commander, why would you go to the guy's house? So that wouldn't really work out. Trevor wouldn't go to like the Kurds military base or whatever, to bump into that guy. Battle for the Mosul. Battle for the soul of the nation, Mosul. Damn. Why is it not popping up? Battle for Mosul Dam. Okay. Something that I thought was interesting was, so it's talking about, the attacks, on the dam. So the date, well, actually, I'll be wrong. In fact, all along for this like outlining process of Babylon Dithers, I've been saying the book takes place in like June or August of 2014. Well, actually, I checked, and actually it takes place in like June of 2013. So yeah, it takes place a year earlier than ISIS's real life northern offensive or whatever. The northern Iraq offensive by Islamic State happened in 2014, but Babylon Dithers actually takes place in 2013. The other thing I wanted to correct, I was like editing this video just so I wouldn't have as long to edit, So last night after filming that stuff, I began editing some of the video, and I was talking about the Sinjar Christians, and then I was kind of like, why have I been calling them Sinjar Christians? Because I was like, are they Christians? Like, where did I get the idea that they were Christians? I knew the Yazidis are part of an ethnic minority, but I was kind of thinking, are they Christians? Because I just wasn't so sure about that. And so I looked it up, like, are Yazidis Christians? And it says, no, Yazidis are not Christians. Yazidism is an independent blah, blah, blah religion distinct from Christianity, Islam, and Judaism with roots in pre-Islamic Kurdish traditions. And then there's a part where it talks about they believe in this peacock angel, which like some people believe to be the Archangel Michael. And actually in a previous book, Ottoman Destiny, I in fact talk about that, where a character is Yazidi and she says she believes, or no, someone else says that the Yazidis are basically Kurds, but they kind of have their own religion, and they believe in this peacock angel who, the Muslims to believe is, I don't know if I said that right, who the Muslims believe to be who the Christians know as Michael. And it says another thing somewhere is that they don't really so much believe in like Satan or hell, but they kind of believe a little bit more that like humanity is responsible for evil. I believe. I'm probably like misrepresenting that terribly, but yeah, it's sort of, something about them. Anyway, so it wasn't actually like really deeply part of my plan for Babylon Dithers that this girl would be a Christian. Just for some reason, I don't know why. I just had it in my head that the Yazidis were Christians. And, I probably would have done research on that regardless before doing anything about that. I wasn't really planning on making like their religion or whatever a factor in the book at all. It's just for whatever reason thinking they were Christians. When in Ottoman Destiny, I talk about how they're, neither Muslims or Christians. Are kind of their own little thing. So anyway, that's just one thing I kind of wanted to correct. So all along saying the Yazidi Christians, well, they're not Christians. They're kind of a, branch unto themselves. But it's talking about the real life attacks on the dam. And so like August 14th, the United States Air Force launches attacks on ISIS positions near the dam. So basically it looks like the battle for the Mosul Dam really kind of begins with American airstrikes, because it was captured by Islamic State on August 7th after Kurdish forces retreated. So like I said, with that Kurdish commander who could run away following a series of battles. So yeah, he could fight them in, I think it was Zumar, wasn't it? Why am I seeing Talafar? Oh yeah, there it is, Zumar. So yeah, I think he fights. That Kurdish guy may fight them in Zumar. Then he retreats to the Mosul Dam, and ISIS attacks, and he retreats again. So yeah, that's like August 7th. Again, I'm not going to keep these dates, especially the year. But I kind of want to follow it, like the essence of it, if I can. So like at this time in real life, the ISIS, Islamic State, had already captured Mosul. So then they went up here to the Mosul Dam to capture that. And yeah, so this is like, not quite a month later after they seize Mosul. But, I'm not going to have it be exactly a month later. It's just going to be, a few days after their capture of Mosul, they advance on the Mosul Dam. And then I talked about, 60-foot wave of water that could be unleashed if the dam is destroyed. Following these developments, Kurdish forces, Iraqi forces, and the United Air Force launched a counteroffensive to retake the dam. And so it seems like that begins on August 16th. So, it's like a week later or whatever. So they could capture that dam. The one guy could kind of flee, maybe making his way to Erbil, where Trevor is. I don't know exactly. And again, I'm kind of thinking I don't want that guy to be part of the Malazada. Or actually, that would make sense why he actually goes to the Malazada family home, because maybe this guy is part of the Malazada family. So it's like, that's why he goes to the Malazada home, because it's like he's going home. I don't know if he'd be like the son of that guy, Firat, because I think Firat is probably like 35 or so. So I wouldn't really think it'd be his son. I mean, it could just be his cousin or something. Or, I don't know, maybe it could be something like, no. I don't know. I don't need to think of that now. But, maybe that guy just has some connection with the Malazada family. Maybe he's like an in-law or something. But anyway, so it was saying here, that would give that guy time to go to Erbil. And I don't really like that the attack on the dam begins with the United States Air Force launching attacks, because the way I kind of have it planned is there's that whole delegitimization campaign where John Walters and Tom Marsh delegitimize the prime minister. And they do that by having this Iraqi general, this Sunni Muslim general, who is introduced in Act 1. He says that the prime minister of Iraq gave the order to retreat from Mosul, so public support around the prime minister crumbles. I think it's a little too early to have that chapter. So, I don't know. I don't really want to do a scene with that guy, with the prime minister, because then a little bit it would become a prime minister book, not so much a Trevor Knight book. But let's see. ISIS commander takes Zumar, and then we meet Trevor in Erbil, and they talk about politics in Iraq. And then Tom Marsh in the United States meets with John Walters, and they talk about delegitimizing the prime minister of Iraq, because Tom Marsh and John Walters want to basically, put American troops back in Iraq, because it's like the president withdrew forces from Iraq, and now Iraq is falling to Islamic State. So they're kind of like, see, this is what, happens when the other side takes control, we were, bringing peace to Iraq or whatever. This is kind of what these guys would think, and the president got U.S. forces out, and then right away it's like Islamic State is taking over the country and, be even worse than Saddam Hussein. So they're kind of like, we need to get back in there and we need to get rid of this prime minister. ISIS attacks the Mosul Dam. I was going to say I could move that up, but I like that these chapters follow each other, because Trevor and the Malazad is talking about politics in Iraq, and then it goes to Tom Marsh and John Walters talking about, politics in Iraq. So that's good. That flows neatly. Then ISIS attacks the Mosul Dam. The Kurdish commander from chapter 1 here flees. Maybe he heads to Erbil. Then I guess that guy needs a bit of time to get from the Mosul Dam to Erbil. So I guess it makes sense that I could switch like chapters a bit. I could switch to William Barrett, but I think I don't really want to do that because then readers may think like, okay, this is going to be the plot of the book, this stuff with all this British naval activity stuff. So I don't want to do that yet. I could theoretically, I guess, have a scene with the Prime Minister and Stephen Knight, who is Trevor's father. He's in the country in Act 1. I don't know quite how long has passed, because I think Stephen Knight, Trevor's father, I think he might be leaving the country soon, even though I could easily change that. Because it's kind of like Stephen Knight, he's a U.S. senator, so how long is his like diplomatic mission in Iraq? Why is he just here for like a week or whatever? I mean, it just seems like that's quite a while for him to, stay in the country. But he would be a good candidate to meet with the prime minister. So, they could just be talking where Stephen Knight is trying to tell him, like, hey, the United States does not want to reoccupy Iraq, but we are, potentially willing to help you with airstrikes and stuff and training and stuff, so you can battle Islamic State. And that prime minister is just like, no, you guys want to retake the country. You want to reoccupy the country. We don't need you here and all this stuff. But now that I say that, that would actually go better here after the Malazada family talks with, Trevor about the politics in Iraq. So just for now, I'm going to say Stephen Knight meets with the Prime Minister. I'm not going to say in Baghdad because I'll pretty much know who I'm referring to. Stephen Knight meets with a Prime Minister inquiring about allowing the U.S. to conduct airstrikes against Islamic State, to which the PM declines, saying the Americans want to reoccupy Iraq. Then I was going to have a scene somewhere. I probably have it written somewhere. I don't know. But it was basically something along the lines of Stephen Knight tells the U.S. President Ramsey that he thinks, the president of Iraq is non-functional, or the prime minister of Iraq, is that what I said? That he's non-functional, he's not cooperating with him. He's not willing to let the U.S. in to do airstrikes and stuff. But then this scene with Tom Marsh saying how the president isn't willing to put forces back in Iraq, that wouldn't really make sense when right here, the previous chapter, Stephen Knight, who's a Democrat and he's, part of the same political party as the president, he's trying to tell the prime minister, like, hey, we're willing to help you against ISIS. So it doesn't really make sense that Tom Marsh and John Walters would be saying, the president isn't willing to do anything about Iraq, because clearly right here we see that he is. Now, that could work just because, Tom Marsh and John Walters would say that the president isn't willing to do anything about ISIS in Iraq. That's just like their viewpoint of it. When right here, the previous chapter, you could see that the president is trying to, get involved in Iraq and keep Islamic State, from taking over. But these guys just don't see it. Tom Marsh and John Walters, they think instead of just doing airstrikes against ISIS, they would kind of rather like have, 100,000 troops come back and, directly fight ISIS and, all that. And, get rid of like pro-Iranian gangs and stuff, factions in Iraq. They would want to make Iraq a pro-American government, that is like completely loyal to the U.S. Whereas Ramsey, the president, he just kind of wants to, halt ISIS's Islamic State's progress in Iraq. So I guess that works. It's not a contradiction or whatever. So, the president is doing what he can to try to keep Islamic State from taking over. It's just Tom Marsh and John Walters do not see that. They think the president is just, giving Iraq to Iran and to Islamic State. That's just their viewpoint. So I guess that does make sense. Oh, but the reason I was going to move that Stephen Knight scene was because of the ISIS attacks Mosul Dam and the Kurdish commander flees the area. The reason I wanted that scene was to give that guy time to go to Erbil. So I think I need to move that up. So let's see. I definitely want to have this scene with Tom Marsh and John Walters talking, so I don't want to cut that scene. I could theoretically cut the scene about Stephen Knight because I've already introduced him, so it's not like I need this chapter to have a Stephen Knight chapter, I've already had him in the book, so I could have anything. I could have a phone call from Ramsey to the prime minister where Ramsey can talk to him himself about, all this stuff. And that way I'll be able to have a, Buck Ramsey chapter, the president, because I don't think I've had a chapter with him in the book yet. And I'm not sure if I do have a chapter with him in the book yet. So, we meet Trevor. He's staying at the place. And then I guess it could switch to Tom Marsh meets with John Walters, now a lobbyist, and they agree to begin a campaign to delegitimize the Prime Minister of Iraq. I think what I'm actually going to do, because I'm having trouble figuring out exactly where to put the chapter for ISIS, and the Mosul Dam. So I think right here, instead of having them attack Zumar and then a chapter or two later they attack the Mosul Dam, I think it would be a lot easier, just because, like I say, I'm having trouble. I need to give them time to get from Zumar to the Mosul Dam. So, I can't do that all really within one chapter. So like one chapter would be them attacking Zumar and the guy flees. Then a couple chapters later would be they attack the Mosul Dam and the guy flees. And then a few chapters later, it'd have to be like a day later or so, you meet that guy in Erbil. So right there, you're looking already at like 6 chapters just to set up the fact that ISIS has attacked the Mosul Dam. So I think instead what I'll do is ISIS commanders attack, I'm going to say, the Mosul Dam, and the Kurdish security forces flee the area. And then I'm going to actually add after previously fleeing from Zumar. And so my idea is the way I could, there's Nibbler, my baby, how I could write that. So the act begins with those ISIS commanders, they're right here somewhere about to attack the dam. And then I could switch to that other Kurdish character and I could talk about how he was previously in Zumar and when ISIS attacked. And then, that's like, a page or whatever, setting that up, explaining how that went, like that guy's backstory. And then he gets attacked again and he just flees again. So instead of having multiple chapters showing this guy fleeing, just at the start of the chapter, at the start of the act, the ISIS commanders attack the Mosul Dam. We meet the Kurdish commander who previously, we learn, fled from Zumar. I don't need to show that actually happening. I'll just refer to it as previously happening. And then you think like, okay, this guy is going to make a stand now, but instead he just flees again. And so that way, that guy is already on his way to Erbil. So Kurdish commanders attack Mosul Dam and that guy flees. We meet Trevor in Erbil. And this scene might, that might take place over like a whole day, kind of like maybe it's evening when the scene happens. And so maybe Trevor is having dinner with them or whatever. And maybe in the morning, I'll just write, I was going to say I like that how it jumps from them talking about the politics of Iraq to switching to a scene with Tom Marsh. I'm kind of a little bit thinking that I don't need to have any kind of major conclusions here where they need to talk about everything, but maybe just in the morning or whatever, Trevor gets up and someone arrives at the house and he's like, they took the Mosul Dam or whatever, So the next morning, the Kurdish commander from the Mosul Dam arrives and says the Mosul Dam was taken and he needs to find Firat, maybe? But Firat is actually going to be, down in Baghdad or whatever. He's working to stop Baghdad from falling to Islamic State. So he can't, come to help right now. And so I'm not going to I may not even so much say all of this, basically I just know that this guy shows up in the morning and he's going to say something that's going to be kind of like a cliffhanger, along the lines of, basically ISIS took Mosul Dam, is what that guy's going to say. So that's all that happens, and that's just the end of the chapter. Then we can cut to, oh, well, actually, I don't know, because if that happens in the morning, it would probably be midnight in Washington, D.C. So if I switch to Washington, D.C., it would be too late for Tom Marsh to meet with John Walters. So that scene would not chronologically fit right now. Let's see. I could have the scene with Stephen Knight in Baghdad meeting with the Prime Minister. Okay, since this just doesn't work out chronologically, because if this scene is in the morning, that doesn't quite work out. Oh, I was going to say I'd just delete that, but instead I think I'll just go bam. Let's see, since I basically need a scene that happens, either in the morning or, late at night at another time, I could have it go to the scene in Cyprus. I don't know exactly what the time zone difference there is. Let's see here. Time zone between Cyprus and Iraq. Probably just an hour or two. Generally 1 hour ahead of Cyprus. During summer, they are in the same time zone. Okay, so basically there's no time zone difference between Cyprus and Iraq too much. Because I was going to say if it's in the morning in Mosul, if I have it actually take part in Gibraltar, which is, I don't even know if I've said what I'm even remotely thinking here. Since I either need a scene in the morning in Iraq or midnight in the United States, I'm trying to think what could I do scenes that are I don't know how to say, early hours of the day or whatever, or late hours at night. And so something that I could do is the scene with British Special Forces take over an Iranian ship bound for Syria. So I was originally going to have that be they do it from Cyprus. I guess I could still do it because it doesn't matter if it's not in the middle of the night or whatever. It could just be still early morning, They don't have to take over that ship in the middle of the night, even though I think that's a little bit, cooler, a military operation like Special Forces taking over a ship at midnight or whatever, It seems like that'd be a good time when they would do that. But I think they could just do it, early in the morning. I could have that, and that would be a relatively short chapter. And also, I think it a little bit would make readers wonder, what's this chapter have to do with anything? And so that would begin to set up all of the scenes with William Barrett. For now, it would actually seem like a really out of place scene, which I kind of like. So, British Special Forces take over a ship bound for Syria. I'm going to say British Special Forces deploying from Cyprus take over an Iranian ship bound for Syria. So yeah, that will kind of be a little bit, I don't think I'd like to have periods in the outline. that will be a bit out of place. Like, what's this scene have to do with anything? But it's building up to William Barrett, and usually William Barrett doesn't have to do with a lot of the plot of Trevor Knight books. But, that's just the way a lot of these books go. It's really out of place. So then what I think will happen is after that, it will cut back to Trevor at Firat's house talking with the Kurdish guy. What I was kind of thinking was like, so this guy who escapes from Zumar and the Mosul Dam and then makes his way to Erbil, what I'm kind of thinking is maybe instead of being part of the Malazada family, I'm thinking he might actually be dating the daughter or something of Firat, or I don't know, maybe it's going to be one of Firat's relatives who stays with him or something. So maybe that soldier, Trevor is he wants to kind of find out what that guy, the commander guy, whoever he is, basically to make sure that guy could go back and fight ISIS, So Trevor's he's thinking that guy is going to quickly return to his army or whatever. But instead, Trevor tries to look for that guy, and maybe that guy, the Kurdish guy who fled, maybe he's just trying to hook up with Firat's daughter or something, in the corner. And Trevor's kind of excuse me, just kind of, he kind of catches the guy in the act. So clearly this guy is kind of more interested in getting it on rather than actually returning to the army to fight ISIS. He's just kind of interested in, male urges getting the better of him. So just to kind of show more the character of that guy, first he fled, and now that he's in Erbil, he just wants to hook up with the girl he's interested in. And so I think Trevor will kind of I don't know exactly how to say it, but Trevor will kind of get that guy to be come on, we got important things to do, And then, so what I was trying to say earlier was, it seems like the attack of the Mosul Dam or whatever, the battle for the Mosul Dam, really begins with U.S. airstrikes, but I don't think I'm ready to do that yet because, the Americans have not intervened yet. And then it also says, Kurdish forces, blah, blah, blah. The next day it says the fighting continued, Kurds capture 3 towns near the dam, Tel Skuf, Sharana, and Batiana. Now, I actually looked up those towns, and they're actually quite far from the Mosul Dam. So I always shake can. Is that one of them? No. Tel Skuf, Sharafia, and Batiana. Batnea. I wonder if that's Batnea. So I think it's just, spelled differently, Batnea and Batnea on Wikipedia. So that's probably that town. Is it Tel Kafi? No, Tel Skuf. Where's Tel Skuf? But I think they're kind of over here a bit somewhere. Oh, Tel Skuf. That's it, right? Tel Skuf. Yeah. And then the other one is kind of up here somewhere. I think it's kind of a ways, though. Sharafira. Where's Shafrahira? Oh, Sharafia. Is that it? Sharafia, yeah. So the Kurds take a town here, Sharafia, and they take Tel Skuf, and they take Batnea right there. Gosh, I swear, it's so hard to keep track of these cities and stuff in the desert. They just immediately disappear. Oh gosh, I swear, you just zoom out or zoom in and you immediately lose your place, or at least I do. So the Kurds are actually quite far away, so they're still attacking these towns, Batnea, Tel Skuf, and whatever up here, Sharafia. So that could actually be something Trevor does. So Trevor, I don't like that exactly how would they get past Mosul, because Mosul is supposed to still be in, ISIS hands. But maybe they go up this road here, blah, blah, blah. And then, so anyway, maybe they're working their way up that road. And just kind of with the idea that, they're going to go to reinforce the Mosul Dam or, work to liberate it or whatever. And on the way, they plan to like pick up the Kurds and stuff. And so that could kind of be a problem where Trevor is trying to rally Kurdish villages and stuff. And this was going to be something I was originally going to do, was that Trevor tries to rally the Kurdish villages and stuff, and just no one's really willing to join. And so he's really having problems with that. Like, hello, ISIS has control of the Mosul Dam. If they destroy that, your country is going to be 50 feet underwater. And the Kurds are still just kind of like, no, we're not fighters. It's not our responsibility or whatever. We don't want to die. And so Trevor's just kind of having some problems. Like each town he goes, no one's really willing to help. But in those couple towns, they could have ISIS there. And so Trevor and that one guy could work to fight ISIS. Now, that is kind of a question, because in Act 1, Trevor kind of decides he does not want to be a soldier, because there's a scene in Tikrit, which is right there, where Trevor is going down a hallway and he kind of chickens out. But I don't know if right now he would be willing to fight. I think Trevor would kind of be a little bit, I don't know, Trevor doesn't really mind fighting ISIS as much, even though that one scene in the hallway, that's going to try to fight ISIS, but there he chickens out. But yeah, I think Trevor may still kind of be thinking, he's willing to go into danger, he wants to defeat Islamic State, and he knows they got to take this dam back. And so also, since that Kurdish guy seems to be kind of a coward and more interested in getting it on with Firat's daughter or whatever, Trevor may kind of be pushing that guy a little bit more to kind of be like, you have a duty to do here, this is your job. You have to, fight Islamic State. And so Trevor's kind of taking that guy while also kind of dealing with his own sort of cowardly thoughts, how in the hallway he kind of chickened out. So in a way, it could kind of be like Trevor facing his own demons, Trevor facing his own fears, going into battle toward danger, and it's kind of motivating him that this guy, this Kurdish guy, seems to like want to run from that. So Trevor's kind of like, no, you're not running from that. We're going to the danger, I don't know. I may change up the reasoning a little bit, but I kind of like that a little bit, where it's kind of like Trevor on the outside, he's kind of appearing a little bit tougher than he is. But since this guy seems to be kind of like shirking his duties or whatever, that kind of gives Trevor a little of the motivation to kind of be like, we're on our way back to the front lines, buddy. And so they could drive up and whatever, and maybe they run into a couple towns that are held by ISIS, like Tel Skuf or Batneh or the other place, Sharafia or whatever. So for any of those towns, whichever they pass through, they could encounter some Islamic State people there. I don't know exactly how much I would have there. They could have a battle scene there. What I was kind of thinking was like, they get prepared, ISIS already occupies part of the town. Trevor and that guy could prepare to fight Islamic State, and they like form a plan, and Trevor goes to attack, and that guy just kind of disappears, And so, yeah, it's just like, once again, that guy just kind of chickens out. And so Trevor does wind up having to like kill the ISIS fighters himself. But then he's kind of like, he finds that guy and he's like, where were you? And the guy could just come up with some flimsy excuse, and Trevor's just, he sees through this guy. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly what comes of it, but they could still kind of continue on to Mosul, I don't know, it could be anything. Like that guy could make up some BS story, and maybe Trevor could just go along with it, like just knowing this guy is full of crap. But he could kind of be saying like, if that guy said something like, oh, there were these fighters over here I had to fight or whatever, Trevor could just be kind of like, oh, I'm glad to have you with me, and the guy is like, thanks, and so Trevor's just like, well, let's keep on going. So they just keep on moving toward the Mosul Dam. And yeah, I don't know. I don't really know if I like this too much. But yeah, I mean, it's just something. It's better than nothing. And I really like it because I don't want Trevor just going here himself. So I kind of like the idea that he's going with this Kurdish guy who's kind of a coward. And because it's also kind of showing the cowardice of the Kurds that Trevor's dealing with, the Kurds are just not really willing to fight. So in each town, they try to get volunteers and stuff, and just no one's really willing to help. But they could still be making their way there, just thinking, we got to retake this dam. We just got to do it. And something I originally planned, but I never got around to actually doing, is originally I was thinking Trevor might consider draining this lake, because this is kind of a real life idea, because this dam is notoriously at risk of failure. And if that dam fails, all of Iraq will be flooded. So that was a real life idea, draining this lake to prevent that. But if you drain that lake, you're going to lose out on a lot of your power for Iraq and all the agriculture and stuff this river provides, and all of that, all the electricity that dam provides. So if you drain that lake, you could really cripple Iraq's, agriculture and power situation and all that. So I think what may happen is just while Trevor's on his way toward Mosul with that guy, once they actually get there and they don't have any volunteers really, Trevor might then kind of begin thinking okay, if no one's going to come and help, I think you and I to this other guy, we're going to drain this lake, and just, yeah. I don't know how they would do that. I guess they just have to dig some kind of channel or something to just funnel the water out. And I think this area is pretty flat. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know exactly how they would do that. I mean, that'd be a tremendous lot of work to do that. Whew. But yeah, that's at least something Trevor could begin to work on or think about doing. Again, I don't think he's actually going to do that, but it could kind of be his plan. He could begin looking into it, scoping out the area, to see if he's going to drain this lake, how to do it. So he could kind of go around with that guy looking for ways to drain the lake, where to drain it to and all that. And so that's what they could kind of be doing, because really, I don't need Trevor to do much at this point, because Trevor actually does not really get the Kurds to respond to this so much. I think, even though maybe he will wind up telling someone that he's thinking of doing this, and maybe that kind of helps give the Kurds the kick in the butt they need to go and retake the dam, because they hear hey, this guy is working on draining the lake, and they know if he does that, how it's going to cripple Iraq's power and agriculture. So that could kind of get around word of mouth, hey, there's this guy who's working on draining the lake. And so then the Kurds could kind of be oh, we need to get the military here ASAP, And so at least that way, Trevor will have some kind of a role in helping the Kurds begin the attack on the dam, because otherwise I don't think Trevor would really have a role in that, which I don't like, because it's supposed to be the Trevor Knight series, And if he has nothing to do whatsoever with the Kurds retaking the dam, with getting them to come and reinforce the area, it's kind of well, Trevor had nothing to do with that, so you could get rid of him and the book would work out the exact same way. So at least this way, if he begins planning on how to drain this lake and the Kurds hear about that and think, oh, get the army here now, we need to retake this dam before this maniac drains the lake, that could kind of be how it goes. I really like that. This maniac is going to drain the lake. So I like that. So British Special Forces deploying from Cyprus take over an Iranian ship bound for Syria. Trevor at Firat's house talking with the Kurdish guy who seems more interested in Firat's question mark daughter. Trevor, who seems more interested in he. I don't know exactly how to say this, so I'll just say he gets that guy to return westward to rejoin the Kurds and retake the dam. Yeah, so they're on their way back to the dam. Like, come on, this isn't a time for getting it on. We got other things to do. We got to go after that dam. And then I guess we could, it's still a bit too early. I don't need the scene now with Trevor learns about the attack on the dam. I guess since I don't want to let this scene go too far, then from there we jump to Iran takes over a British ship in the Strait of Hormuz. William Barrett sets out to rescue the British ship, but is too late. I'm actually going to add William Barrett in I'm going to do a question mark there because potentially it won't actually be William Barrett because I think his ship, the HMS Resilient, is still undergoing repairs. So he might dispatch one of his ships in his fleet to try to rescue this British ship that's coming under attack. And it's too late. So I think that kind of makes sense. And that way we can actually meet another captain in William Barrett's fleet. And Barrett is misspelled, I think. So I like that. So there's a scene with the British there, and then there's a chapter with Trevor, and then there's another scene setting up the British storyline so it doesn't get too far away. So then I think we could have a scene with Trevor taking Kurdish guy towards Mosul Dam. I don't know if it should be capitalized or not. I don't know exactly what to say here because I don't want to say like they talk because obviously they're going to talk. Taking Kurdish guy towards Mosul Dam. I'll just write maybe they... I don't know. This may be stuff I change around a bit as I write, so I don't think this is too important, the exact ordering. I just kind of want to write something. Trevor taking Kurdish guy towards Mosul Dam. I'll just say they either try to recruit local Kurds who are unwilling to join the attack on Mosul Dam. I kind of like non-capital, or they reach towns held by Islamic State, and then I'll go ahead and copy those town names. And then since I'm going to have maybe these town names in the book, I'll probably actually put them on the map. My font is probably going to be messed up because of this, but bam. Telescope and whatever. What am I on? 12-point Garamond, and I think it might be bold. I don't know. Garamond. 12-point. Hacha. Yeah, it looks like it's bold. Oh, what happened? There we go. Anyway, good enough, maybe. Since I have those town names, whichever one I wind up using, I will probably add them to the map. So, whatever. So one of these towns may be one of those towns. And I could actually change these roads around a little bit, but those are kind of the main highways in the region or whatever. So maybe one of those towns is actually one of those towns. I don't think so. Maybe that town looks like it'd be a little too high potentially. Let's try to see. It's kind of northeast of that river or lake. So it'd probably be, it's probably like Duhok or something is that, those dots or whatever. But I could change it around a little bit. In fact, right now, I still think Babira may still appear in the map. But yeah, I could potentially wind up even redoing this map. This might be the map for Act 3, and then maybe I'll do a more detailed map for Act 2, showing more something like this view or something where, Mosul up there in the top left and Erbil down there or something, A plane is flying overhead. I don't know if you guys are going to hear that or not. Gosh, I have Maverick flying over my head. Anyway, that's not important. But yeah, so if I do add any town, I'll probably wind up adding it to whatever map I have. So they are on their way toward Mosul, and they either have trouble, Trevor has trouble rallying the Kurds, or they reach towns held by Islamic State, and that guy, like I say, just kind of disappears, so he's really not useful. And then I think I could either switch to the Iran thing or the Americans. Let's see. I think since I do want to... Okay, so presumably this scene happened sometime in the afternoon with Trevor and the Kurdish guy heading toward Mosul. So now this scene with Tom Marsh and John Walters, that could happen in the morning in the United States. And yeah, so that works out fine. And then I think next... it's still a little early, I think, to jump to William Barrett. I don't quite want to have him have his battle yet. So maybe I'll just do another scene with Trevor. Question mark. And what that'd probably be is whatever the opposite thing I did. So if I had... a scene here where Trevor is having trouble recruiting the Kurds, then this scene could be Trevor and that one guy getting in a battle or whatever, which would probably make more sense, but I'm not so sure. But since those towns are a little bit far away, so Erbil is way down here, those towns are like right in this area here. So I think it'd make more sense if they're driving up, they could be stopping at a few, each one of these towns or whatever, trying to get recruits, and just no one is willing. So I think that would be better here, taking Kurdish guy toward Mosul Dam, and then I'll say, things are happening. Trevor tries recruiting local Kurds to join the attack on the dam, but no one is willing to join. And, they'll also be talking. Trevor and that other guy could be talking. I could break that up where Iran takes... Oh, no, I don't want to break that up into separate chapters because, so they attack the British ship, and while that's going on, William Barrett sends another ship to rescue that ship. So I don't want to have that separated by a chapter, So that should be one chapter. So I can't break that up. I guess this could still happen where I could put the Tom Marsh scene there, and then I'll write arriving in a town occupied by IS, that's Islamic State, and then there's the towns. Trevor and the Kurdish guy fight against them. The Kurd disappears, but reappears after the battle is over. Trevor and he and Trevor continue westward. So just like I said, how Trevor's like, oh, well, I'm glad to have you with me. Even though Trevor knows this guy is a complete coward and he's full of it, he is still thinking, I'm still taking this guy with me, even though Trevor, you may think he'd kind of be like, just get out of here. You're completely useless. Trevor's still kind of dragging this guy along like, come on, let's go. And I think it may be because since no one else is joining him, he would kind of just be like, he's so tired of that, he's not going to give this guy a chance to back out. This guy is kind of a little bit of a pushover. So I think Trevor kind of pushes him around a little bit. Like, come on, we got to do this. This is your duty and all that. So I don't think Trevor's just going to let this guy walk off. Whereas with everyone else, all these Kurdish villagers and stuff, Trevor's not going to like force them to join. But this guy, he's actually already in the military, the Kurdish military. So Trevor kind of feels that, he can kind of boss this guy around a little bit. This guy is a soldier. It is his duty to go, to the battle and all that. So since I just wrote that, I don't need this scene, another scene with Trevor. Oh, and then I don't like periods, so get rid of that. Okay, so I think at this point, so they have had their battle. Since I don't want to get away too far from it, I guess I could have the scene where William Barrett sails into the Iran. So basically, what happened, if you guys haven't seen the previous videos, which I know no one's watching this series at all. So the British capture this Iranian ship that's going to Syria because the British don't want Iranian aid going to the Syrian regime. So in response to that, Iran hijacks a British ship in the Strait of Hormuz. And so William Barrett, who is in Oman here, he dispatches one of his ships to try to go rescue that British ship, but it's too late. So that ship is taken toward into the Iranian waters. So what's happening here in this scene is William Barrett gets orders to go ahead and go up to that maritime zone wherever the Iranians took that British ship and go ahead and go into the waters and just dare Iran to attack the HMS Resilient, because the HMS Resilient is a battleship. It's like the first battleship in the modern era, the first battleship to serve after World War II, really. So yeah, that's just kind of something funny, especially now that Trump has actually talked about building battleships. So this is something I thought about back in 2008 or something, was the British actually build the world's first modern battleship after World War II. And so, yeah, it's the HMS Resilient. So it's taking part in all these battles all across the world, kind of. And so, yeah, I wrote that in 2008. And the reason I wrote that is because I thought it'd kind of be a ridiculous idea, imagine actually having battleships again. And I gave it to the British because the British are pretty much a fallen empire, They're pretty weak now, really. Whereas their navy used to be pretty formidable. But now it's they're a fallen empire. They've lost a lot of their respect. So what I was actually going to do was, in the Trevor Knight series, the British are kind of based. They have this really powerful battleship, so they're kind of riding high on that. So the British kind of have a F around and find out mentality, which they really do not have in real life. So that's why the British are yeah, go ahead and let's send our battleship right here off the coast of Iran and just say, go ahead, attack our battleship. Go ahead and see what happens. And so that's just why I say the British are based in the Trevor Knight series. The British aren't messing around. Whereas in real life, the British would just be oh, please don't do that. Give us our ship back. British are... I don't want to finish that sentence. Anyway, I hate the British. So yeah, that's what happens is William Barrett gets orders to go ahead and take the HMS Resilient up here and just dare the Iranians to attack. Just say, come on, we're violating your waters. Here we are. Go ahead and attack us. You have every right to attack us. We're in we're in your territorial waters. And so the Iranians attack, and the HMS Resilient just swats them all out of the sky, or sinks a few ships. And so, yeah, that's kind of what's going on there. So William Barrett sails into Iranian maritime zone. I don't think I can actually have a battle yet, because if the start of the chapter is him receiving orders, it's going to take probably a couple hours to get up there. So I can't really so much have that in one chapter. So I think going back to Trevor, I'm going to say Trevor and the Kurdish guy arrive near the Mosul Dam. No reinforcements have arrived, so Trevor begins planning draining the Mosul Lake. I don't know if it's called the Mosul Lake or if it actually has a name or anything. This body of water here. What did that say? Tigris. So yeah, just maybe the Tigris. Oh, there it is, Mosul Dam Lake. Oh, what a creative name. So yeah, the Mosul Dam Lake. So Trevor, that guy is whatever. So they don't have any soldiers to retake the dam. And so Trevor's just like, well, I guess we're just going to have to start looking into draining this lake if no one's going to come. Anyway, then I could have the scene with the HMS Resilient battles Iran off their coast. That's really all I need to say about that. Yeah, so they have that. And then, let's see here. Let's see here. I'm kind of thinking if I could have a scene with Stephen Knight meeting with the Iraqi prime minister. But again, I think, he would probably be out of the country by now. Or I could have it be another person, like I have an American diplomat I could have it be, because maybe Stephen Knight has returned to the United States. Or like I said, maybe this prime minister could call the president of the United States and talk. Let's see. I'm trying to think about exactly how to... I'm being really ineloquent here. I kind of know what needs to happen, but just trying to figure out the exact order of it. So the HMS Resilient battles Iran off their coast. This may happen a little bit later in the chronology, because usually William Barrett's battles are kind of a highlight or whatever, like the climax of an act. So I may put that a little bit later. I'm just going to kind of throw in chapters, and maybe I'm going to change the ordering, but I'm going to go ahead and say that President Ramsey talks on the phone. Maybe he's still like on the plane heading home or something. He talks on the phone with Stephen Knight about his impressions of the Prime Minister of Iraq. Ramsey calls the Prime Minister and inquires about allowing American airstrikes, but the PM says no, and that the Americans want to reoccupy Iraq. I don't know if he'd say that, though, because that seems like really confrontational to say that to the American president. Because I think even if this guy doesn't really like the Americans, this prime minister, he would probably really try to be tactful about that. And he'd just say, my country can handle this fine. We're all good. Thank you for the offer, but we can handle this. So I don't think he would really say that. But I could actually play with that. So maybe that is what he says, but then maybe Ramsey also has, I guess then I'll just write after the call, Ramsey talks with, I'll just say like his intelligence chiefs, because there's one guy who's like the director of the CIA who I could introduce there. So then maybe like that guy is listening in on the call, and then he could kind of say like what is really going on with that prime minister, about kind of cutting through like the political speak of the guy saying like, thank you for your offer, but I can handle this fine. And then the director of the CIA kind of tells the president like the prime minister is saying no to you, that he doesn't want us to occupy the country. That's what he's really saying, if that makes sense, hopefully. Because I'm sure that they have like psychological tests on everyone that the president would communicate, like with all kind of foreign leaders and stuff. They would have like a full psychic evaluation profile of them. So they would be able to tell the president like what the person is really thinking, what they really mean by what they say. So, maybe that's something that guy could talk about, is talking about basically the psychology of the prime minister. I don't know. I don't really like that too much, because I'm not sure exactly if anything comes of this immediately, because I don't know. It's kind of more, I don't know. For now, I'll just keep it. I may rework exactly how I do this. Let's see. I could either jump back to the HMS Resilient, or I could jump back to Trevor and the other guy. For now, I'm actually going to just write in short chapter with Trevor and Kurdish guy. I'm just going to wind up calling him Kurdish guy at this point. Short chapter with Trevor and Kurdish guy about their continued work planning on how to drain the lake. And maybe like that guy, maybe that guy can get word out to people about Trevor's plans. So yeah, the Kurds are kind of like, word is going out quickly that like, holy shit, this guy is insane. He's going to drain the lake, send help. And then again, I don't know about the ordering of all of this. So then I could just have this scene where this Iraqi general, this Sunni Muslim guy, declares that the prime minister of Iraq is the one who gave the order to retreat from Mosul. That's something that happens in Act 1. Public support around the prime minister crumbles. Someone from John Walter's organization pays off the Iraqi general. So yeah, I explained that in the previous video, but basically that's their plan to delegitimize the prime minister, is they bribe this Sunni general to say that the prime minister gave the order for the military to retreat from Mosul. So that makes people think that the reason Iraq is losing to Islamic State is because the prime minister of Iraq is just telling the military to flee. And so because of that, the support for the prime minister crumbles. And do I actually have anything where I say... I don't think I really need to show so much like President Ramsey. Like what I was going to have is basically, it says here how this guy, basically the Kurdish military does arrive near the Mosul Dam, and a guy like whoever, part of the Kurdish army or whatever, I just say like a lieutenant because I don't know who it would be. He tells Trevor that Ramsey, the U.S. president, has announced that the Americans will begin bombing ISIS, and that the president of Iraq has removed the prime minister from office. So that's because of the thing with the prime minister loses support. But I don't think I really need to show that so much. So let's see. Again, I'm so sorry. I mean, the order of all this, I may mix it up just to try to figure out like, oh, I think this scene it would actually come better before this scene or whatever. I may be changing that up pretty radically as I write, just depending on like the tension of each scene, how, the chapters flow. So really, I wouldn't put much stock into the order of this whatsoever. I'm just mainly worried about, the structure of it, that all these chapters exist. The British Prime Minister meets with blah, blah. I don't think, it's been a while since the HMS Resilience battle, but again, I'm going to probably rework the order of all these chapters later, just as I write, figuring out what goes best where. So, I guess it doesn't matter where things go since I'm telling you that the order doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go ahead and just put it in because I don't want to be here all day trying to figure out exactly where to put it when I would just wind up changing it anyway. So the British Prime Minister meets with the Iranian president in New York and they agree to release each other's ships. The Iranian president privately assures the PM that their ship that was hijacked off the coast of Cyprus will not go to Syria. The Iranian ship is released and goes to Turkey, where a man agrees to run the oil to Syria. Barrett sees, after a delay, the British ship moving away from Iran. William Barrett, final scene in the book, receives next orders. So yeah, that could go there. Thank you, babe. I don't know if you heard him. So then I guess we could go back to Trevor. He's overlooking the Mosul Dam, and we already know he's thinking about draining the lake. Trevor is looking back. A lieutenant tells him that Ramsey has ordered the American to do airstrikes in Iraq, and that the Iraqi president has removed the prime minister. The battle for the Mosul Dam commences. That can go there. Remember, I want to have 20 chapters per act, so we're getting pretty close. ISIS general and... Thank you, baby. ISIS general, the Mosul Dam comes under attack. The battle begins. Thank you, baby. But I just said that right there. The battle for the Mosul Dam commences. So that's kind of overlapping. Trevor mostly focuses. Um, Again, I don't know exactly how much content I'll have here. So, I mean, since the battle for the Mosul Dam did take a couple days or whatever, it may take more than one chapter, you know? Maybe I'm going to have some storyline with that Kurdish guy, you know, the famous Kurdish guy, the coward guy. Maybe I have some kind of story arc for him where something happens where, who knows, maybe like a ISIS fighter is about, I'm thinking Trevor is kind of more doing humanitarian work. So maybe Trevor is, you know, doing humanitarian stuff, helping the Kurdish soldiers. And maybe there's something like, you know, an ISIS fighter slips in behind him and is like going to do like a suicide attack against Trevor or something. And Trevor doesn't have a gun. And then that Kurdish guy shoots the bad guy who was about to kill Trevor. So it's like, you know, if Trevor would have told that guy to, like, you know, just get out of here, you're completely useless, then that ISIS fighter would have killed Trevor. So that guy, Kurdish guy, winds up saving Trevor's life in the end. Maybe. I just kind of came up with that right now. But that, you know, it gives that guy meaning, kind of. So I'll just say during the, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and put that into the book because I already have these characters, you know, the ISIS general. Oh, maybe I'll say ISIS general Mosul Dam comes under attack. He sends his lieutenant. Wow, I actually spelled lieutenant correctly. To Tal Afar. Is that the way to spell it? It's down here somewhere. Gosh, it's so hard to find stuff in the desert here. Talafar, yeah. So sends that guy to Talafar. He's not really sending him to Talafar though. So what he could say is just, hey, we have some forces around Talafar working their way towards Sinjar. I want you to head out there and do stuff at Sinjar, you know, because that's going to be Act 3 of the book. So yeah, that's how I could get Talafar in, is just to that ISIS commander tells the other ISIS commander, like, hey, head out to Talafar, join, you know, our fighters there because they're moving on Sinjar. So that way that other commander will get on the move, and that guy is going to be like the main one responsible for the Sinjar massacre and all that. So that's why it's good to have this ISIS general. If the Mosul Dam comes under attack, he sends his lieutenant to Talafar to join the Islamic State push to take Sinjar. So that sets up, oh, what happened to the numbering here? Could I do continue numbering? There we go. So yeah, that sets up that, you know, something's going to happen around Sinjar next. So that's setting up the next phase. During the battle, I'll just say for now, like 2 day. Should there be another hyphen there? 2 day long battle for the dam. Trevor is doing humanitarian. Wow, I spelled it right. Work. He comes under attack by an Islamic State fighter. Unarmed Trevor. I don't really need to write all this, but I just will. Unarmed Trevor is about to be killed when the Kurdish guy shoots the. I was gonna say bad guy shoots the Islamic State fighter. So yeah, that kind of like redeems that guy. Like, hey, he actually served a purpose. He saved Trevor's life. If Trevor didn't bring him along, then Trevor would have died. So I don't need that because I just wrote all that. The attack on the dam ultimately prevails, but I kind of want to switch and have another chapter. So it'd actually be good if I had the thing with William Barrett there. I think maybe. I don't know. Right here you can see, you know, chapter 20, so that'd be perfectly on track. The attack on the dam ultimately prevails. The ISIS general vehicle is destroyed by an airstrike, preventing his escape. He goes to detonate an explosive set around the Mosul Dam and is stopped by Trevor. I could actually have it be where that other guy maybe kills the guy instead of Trevor. I don't know. Because on the one hand, it'd be kind of like Trevor getting his moment where, maybe that guy the Kurdish fighter guy could actually potentially get killed. And so Trevor could pick up his weapon and kill the other guy, the ISIS fighter guy. Or maybe that guy just gets wounded. I'm kind of thinking instead of dying, which I think would kind of be cliche. And also I think it wouldn't really be very much of an emotional investment because I think readers probably won't care about that guy. They probably won't like that guy too much. So I think if I was to have him die and try to make it a sad thing, I think a lot of readers would probably be like, good, I wanted that guy to die anyway. I think it'd work better if he just gets wounded. He goes on to detonate the explosives and is stopped by Trevor. So yeah, I'm not going to write that down, but since I already have a recording of it, that's probably what I'll do is the Kurdish guy, he goes to attack the one ISIS fighter, but maybe he gets, shot or something, so he gets wounded. And so Trevor takes his gun and kills the bad guy who's trying to blow up the dam. The thing I was trying to say, though, is that this would be a good spot right here. Oh, I think what I could do maybe... since this chapter is actually going to be from the perspective of like the British Prime Minister, this scene here with Barrett sees after a delay the British ship moving away from blah, 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 that would be a perspective shift. So I was going to just have it be this one scene where William Barrett gets his next orders. Since this scene here, Barrett sees after delay the British ship moving away from Iran, since that would also be from William Barrett's perspective, I think this whole part will be, its own chapter. Let's see. That their ship will not go to Syria. I think what I'm going to do is cut that. It will not go to Syria. And then bam. So the Iranian ship is released and goes to Turkey, where man agrees to run the oil to Syria. So I don't want to go into all what this means. I talked about in the previous video. So Barrett sees after a delay the British ship moving away from Iran. And so, yeah, basically the whole thing with the naval battle is over. And then William Barrett gets his orders that sets up the next book. So he'll probably be told to go to Cyprus, because that way the HMS Resilient will be right around here when all the stuff happens with Israel in the next book. So I've already set it up that William Barrett is going to be right in that area. So that's good. So that sets up, why William Barrett is around Cyprus in Atlantis Dislodged. So, hey, we actually have 20 chapters here. So that would actually be it. So, yeah, that's the end of Act 2, basically. So, yeah, like I say, the whole idea here was I was just driving in town and I thought, hey, what if Act 3 of Babylon Dithers is actually part of Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged? Because I didn't really like how a fourth of Babylon Dithers would have been set in Syria. So, yeah, I thought, hey, all that stuff could actually be what Trevor is doing in Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged. And then because of it, those two storylines I had originally for Act 2, the Mosul Dam and the stuff around Sinjar, I could split that into 2 acts. So Act 2 is the battle for Mosul, and then Act 3 will be all this stuff with this Yazidi girl. And you could see just like these are all like roughly chapters dealing with a Yazidi girl. So already we're up to 12 chapters, even though I'm going to like redo this. And I guess I'm going to still do it in this video, but I think I'm going to take another break. My voice is still good, but I've been talking for probably close to 2 hours again. So I think, I'm probably good for now. So I think I'll pick this up later on, either later today or tomorrow where I'll go through the outline of Act 3. And I'm also considering I might do a re-outlining of Act 4, because I really did not like my outline for Act 4, where I'm talking about the Kurdish referendum, because I was trying to talk about like an Assyrian woman and how she relates to Trevor, and just nothing comes of her. So I'd really, if I could, like to redo the Act 4 outline, but I don't know, because a lot of that I might just kind of come up with on the spot. I don't know. Planning for Act 4 has always been a pain to me, because it's just hard to think of what to do and what Trevor's doing. But I think I kind of got a little bit of a better idea now that I kind of decided that the governor of Kirk, I think, will actually be the father of this fighter that that Trevor met during the siege of Kobane which happens in Syrian Dander. There's this fighter named Yektan Allah al-Din, who is an Iraqi Kurdish fighter that's helping in, the defense of Kobane. And so Trevor really kind of grew to like that guy, Yektan Allah al-Din, and he died in Syrian Dander fighting against ISIS. And so Trevor will learn that that guy's father is the governor of Kirkuk. And so Trevor will go to him thinking like, hey, I fought with your son. I really respected him. He was a good fighter. And Trevor will learn that that guy's father does not respect the sacrifice his son made, Yektan, because he thinks his son was kind of a fool dying for the Syrian Kurds. Like, why did he do that? He's an Iraqi and he goes and dies for Syrian Kurds. Like, why? That's a waste of his life. And so Trevor is just really kind of surprised at that. Like, basically, Trevor's kind of thinking like, hey, your son was a hero and you're disrespecting the sacrifice he made. Man, I'm already starting to cry just thinking about it. So I think I can kind of write a lot more of Act 4 kind of around that relationship. So yeah, that's something I think I could do for Act 4. But anyway, I actually look forward to doing the rest of these outlines, Act 3 with Sinjar, and then maybe Act 4. I know this video is probably going to be like 3, 4, or 5 hours long, and I know no one's going to watch it, but mainly I'm doing it for myself because it helps me to do these videos, because otherwise if I was to just sit here on my computer, I'd probably not be able to do this. But when I talk to people about my books, I'm able to think about things. And the reason I like to explain it is because if I cannot explain it to someone else, I know it's the wrong idea, because if I can't explain it to someone, how will I explain it to readers? So if I can tell, like, just as I'm trying to speak, no, this is not the right idea, then a lot of times the actual good idea will come to me. So that's why I really find these videos beneficial for me. So I know no one else is probably going to be interested in them, but they're good for me because they help me to be productive and help me to think. But something I guess I will say is that, oh, there's Nibbler, my baby. My favorite author growing up was Clive Cussler. If I could see on YouTube videos of Clive Cussler plotting out his books and picking the titles for his books and outlining his books and just seeing his process, seeing him start to write the books, seeing him do the research for the books and all that, and just talking about his ideas for the book and the changes he's making, and to see his editing mistakes and all that, what he's doing for the revisions. Personally, I would find that very interesting, and I wrote the Trevor Knight series really as an homage to Clive Cussler's Dirk Pitt books. I mean, my Trevor Knight series is kind of a love letter in a way to the Dirk Pitt series by Clive Cussler. So that's kind of why I'm comparing it to him, is because if I could see that, videos on YouTube of Clive Cussler outlining his book, I would find that so valuable. Man, that would be really cool to see just his process, how he actually comes up with the books. So, maybe potentially one day someone might think the same for my books, where someone would think, man, I'm really glad I get to see how Sean Holt, thought of his book and like all the mistakes he was making and, you know, the wrong ideas he was thinking of and how he was like correcting his ideas and trying to make it better or whatever, you know, just to see how my process works. Maybe someday someone will find that kind of stuff valuable. I know the vast majority of people will never find it valuable, and maybe no one ever does find it valuable, and, you know, maybe I just slip into obscurity and am never remembered. That's very likely to be the case. But writing is my passion, and so I just want to do it, even if it's something that never goes anywhere. It's just my passion in life, and if that's all my life is, and if my life is kind of a waste, you know, where nothing ever comes of it and I'm never remembered and no one ever appreciates my work, I'm kind of, you know, at peace with that. It's kind of like, well, okay, well, at least I lived the life I wanted to and tried to do the things that excited me and that I was passionate about. So even if you're passionate about something, it doesn't mean you're necessarily ever going to go anywhere with it. You always hear people say like, oh, if you just stick to your dreams, you'll have your dream. And I think that's largely BS, because I think a lot of people work really hard at things and they never get any kind of reward. It's never comes of anything. It's just where like really talented people never get recognized. Their talent never gets recognized. Their hard work never gets recognized. And they die, and it's just like no one remembers them. No one really cares. No one appreciates it. No one respects it. And that's just really the way it is with probably most people. So, you know, I think especially for artists, we always want to like hope that we are remembered, that we are appreciated, that our work is appreciated and all that. But it just really doesn't happen for a lot of people. So just kind of as a realist, that's kind of where I am. But still, there's kind of like, that's something I tell myself, is that maybe someday someone will appreciate it. Someone will get some kind of value out of it. Maybe like to some person, maybe I'll be their favorite writer. And yeah, and something I also like to think about is like, I did not read any Clive Cussler books till I think his like 14th or 15th book, which was Atlantis Found. I kind of want to say it was his 14th book. I'll look it up. Which book, let's see. I think I could just look up Goodreads maybe. Do I have a link to Goodreads? Yep, there it is. And then it's going to ask me to sign in, but I don't have a Goodreads account. What's it called? Atlantis Found. I'm trying to find which number in the series it is. I think like 15. Wow. So this was the first book by Clive Cussler I ever read, Atlantis Found, and I have a signed copy of it, which is really sweet. So I did not read my first Clive Cussler book till his 15th novel in the Dirk Pitt series. 15. So kind of what I think is that my favorite reader or whatever, whoever views me as like their favorite author, they may not even discover me. They may not even know I exist until my 15th Trevor Knight book. That's kind of how I've been thinking. Since I didn't discover Clive Cussler until his 15th Dirk Pitt book, maybe whoever does wind up loving my books, if like maybe one person out there loves my books, they may not even discover me until my 15th book, just like with Clive Cussler, you know? So that's kind of my reasoning, is that whoever thinks like I am their favorite author, if that makes sense, they may not even know I exist yet. So it's kind of like I'm just writing, waiting for that moment to happen, you know, and just keep chugging out books. And maybe eventually whoever likes my books will discover me. And that's kind of what I tell myself. And it may not happen in my lifetime, and it may never happen. But that's just kind of what I tell myself, is that, you know, whoever likes my books, maybe they don't even know I exist yet. But I'm here working at it, working on my books. And so hopefully one day my books are available to them. And that's kind of why I keep writing, even though, you know, I'm really not having success with it. Maybe in a few years or however long it takes, maybe they'll eventually discover me, is kind of what I tell myself. Anyway, so I really like the outline I made here. Like I say, I may change some of the ordering a bit, but it seems like all of these chapters are pretty essential to the plot, and there's 20 of them. Every act has 20 chapters, so that way the entire book will have about 80 chapters, which is kind of my goal. So anyway, that's it for today, or for now, for Act 2. And so basically, all I need to do now, once I re-outline Act 3, which I assume I can do that, I assume I won't have a problem with that. What I'll probably do after that is I'll probably formally make the decision that I'm going to do this. Act 3 of Babylon Dithers is officially going to move into Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged and cut the two storylines into their own acts. So Mosul Dam will become Act 2 and Sinjar will become Act 3. And once I have an outline for that, I'll make the decision okay, this is the new outline. Whereas what I was doing, kind of thinking of before, if I cannot come up with a good outline for this, where I just can't tell a full story about a full act about the Mosul Dam or a full act about Sinjar, then I'll probably just cancel this. So then the whole stuff in Syria would still be part of Act 3 and just cancel this whole idea to do a re-outlining. But since I think I will be able to redo this outline, I think I'm going to proceed with this. So the original stuff for Act 3 with Syria is probably going to now be part of Atlantis Dislodged, which itself is kind of cool because now it's half of the first act of Atlantis Dislodged is already ready pretty much. All the Trevor stuff is pretty much written. I mean, or at least the outline of it is written. So yeah, I've already been recording this little segment for 50 minutes. 50 minutes. So yeah, right now the entire video, if I edited it at this point, would probably be 3 hours, and I still need to do all of Act 3 outlining and then maybe all of Act 4 re-outlining as well. So yeah, this video is probably going to be 4 or 5 hours. I know no one's going to watch it. So it's why am I doing all this work for a video no one's going to watch? Again, it's just because it's useful to me, because it helps me think, it helps me get my thoughts in order. I would have never thought of all this stuff, about Trevor taking the guy going to the Malazada house, and it's he has a crush on Firat's daughter or something, and so Trevor takes him up here, and that guy is a coward and all of that, and the thing about how he saves Trevor in the Mosul Dam and how he gets injured and Trevor takes his gun and kills the guy. I would have never thought of that just sitting here on my own, but I think about it here and now by talking about it. So it just helps me, and that's why I do these videos. Maybe one day someone will find some value of this video. Maybe it'll just help put them to sleep. I don't know why anyone else would really be on the edge of their seat for this entire video. I think it'd probably just be it helps put them to sleep, which is fine. I mean, if that happens, okay, I'm glad to be of some use to you. But anyway, that's going to do it for Act 2 of Babylon Dithers. I like it pretty well. I don't want to go through it again and read every point, but I think it will be fine. I think it'll work good. I may rearrange the order of the chapters a little bit, but otherwise I think all the pieces are in place. So yeah, I think Act 2 is pretty well done. So yeah, next I'd move on to Act 3. All right, and we are back with another day for Phase 3 of Babylon Dithers, and Nibbler is doing something in his cage. I don't know if you can hear that. Oh, there's Nibbler, my baby. So Act 3, originally, again, this was part of Act 2, but I'm separating it. So the other part of Act 2 was the stuff around Sinjar. So again, I talked about earlier in the video, I don't know why I thought they were Christians, so just get rid of that. So what I'm going to do, I think, is that to kind of give some space. So earlier in the last act, I had ISIS general in Mosul Dam sends his lieutenant to Talifar to join whatever. Now, I figure I probably want to show that guy to begin the act. Let's see. One thing I'm thinking about is originally what I was going to do after there's a scene in Sinjar, the Kurds come from Syria and attack from the west and they help free the Yazidis. And so there's this one girl who was getting abused and stuff, and she decides to become a fighter and join the Kurds. So originally what was going to happen in Act 3, like the first chapter, they were going to go up to this town, Kamishli, and that girl was kind of going to choose to join the Kurds. So I think I would have to... Oh, wait. Oh, gosh, I'm kind of getting myself mixed up here. So since I was thinking, this is Act 3, how do I say? Since I thought originally what happened at the end of Act 2 was the Yazidis were rescued. But now I just realized, none of that has happened yet. So yeah, never mind what I was saying. Just to let you know, basically what I was going to say was originally after that girl is rescued, the Yazidi girl, I was going to have part of her deciding to join the Kurds actually happen in the next act, which would have been Act 3 of the book, which was going to take place in Syria. But since I'm deciding to cut that act, all the stuff in Syria from the book, that'll have to happen either at the end of this act or the start of the next act, which would be Act 4. So probably have it at the end of this act. So I guess the first thing that would need to happen is that one ISIS general is going to Talifar and then making his way to Sinjar. So I don't know if I should show him actually arriving in Talifar or not. I guess it makes sense that he would arrive in Talifar and to show something about him uniting with the Islamic State fighters there. Maybe we could meet another Islamic State fighter or two. I don't know, because there's going to be one guy who that Yazidi girl winds up killing, so maybe that will be one of the guys that the new ISIS commander meets. So I could kind of begin setting that guy up, the guy that girl will wind up killing. So yeah, I think what will happen is this scene will be ISIS commander arrives at Tal Afar and Islamic State is already kind of there. Originally what happened was when Islamic State attacked Tal Afar, the Kurds fled. But I don't think I really want to show that for a little bit. I was thinking I could show that happen again. ISIS attacks and the Kurds flee. But since we already have the Kurds fighting for the Mosul Dam, I think what I'll do is that will just be kind of in the backstory. So when the one ISIS commander shows up at Tal Afar, the other guy, maybe it's the guy who, abuses that Yazidi girl, maybe that guy will say we arrived here a week ago and the Kurds just fled, they ran away, And so that's just, even though you won't really see it happening, you'll know that, the Kurds fled from Zumar. That one Kurdish guy fled from the Mosul Dam. And here at Tal Afar, the Kurds fled. So it's just a repeated thing that the Kurds keep fleeing. So ISIS commander arrives at Tal Afar. And I guess... even though I just said this in the video, I guess I'll just write it. ISIS commander arrives at Tal Afar and learns how the Kurds previously fled from the city. And then I'll just say they begin the march toward Sinjar. So yeah, the guy is like, okay, well, we have a new destination. We're going to Sinjar. And then now... one thing I should say is, when I was putting all these chapters here, I was not organizing them at all. So I can't really just trust reading the next scene, whatever appears here, because I kind of put these here fairly randomly. So, yeah, I can't trust that too well. So I may have to backtrack occasionally, when I am going through this, because maybe I'll be doing chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Then I'll come upon something down here and be like, oh no, that has to happen before all this stuff here. So I may have to backtrack a little bit at some point, because I don't want to like go through all these and try to like sort all these now. I'm just going to kind of proceed from here. Oh, one thing I want to do, I guess I will just do the numbering, set numbering value. Even though this is actually for Act 2, this is probably going to be like chapter 21, 22, 23, whatever. And so this would actually be like chapter 41 or whatever. I'll just leave it for now, because this is just like a separate page for the outline. You know, it's not as part of my main outline. So the chapter numbers here don't really matter. They're going to change once I slot them into the main outline. Okay, so next thing I want to do, something I talk about in my Act 2 video of this series, is that I don't want to show in much detail what is actually happening to the Yazidis, because they're kind of encountering a lot of like assaults, like the women and girls and stuff. They're getting assaulted by the ISIS fighters, but I don't want to show that, and that was a very deliberate point I did not want to do when I was outlining this the previous time. Now, since I decided to break these storylines up, the Mosul Dam and the Sinjar stuff, and make them into separate acts, you might think, oh, since now the Sinjar stuff is its own act, I'm going to have to come up with more chapters for the Yazidis, which is true. But in spite of that, I still do not want to like, oh, well, I need to come up with 5 more chapters now, you know, because I'm losing all the Mosul Dam chapters. So since I need to come up with 5 or 10 more chapters or whatever, I guess I just have to show those assaults. I don't want to do that. So even though I'm going to have to come up with more chapters for this storyline, you know, the Yazidi storyline, I still do not want to show like, okay, here's a chapter of assaults, and then, oh, I need another chapter, so here's another chapter of more assaults. You know, I don't want to do that. I still want to show basically as minimal, like in your face, violent stuff, especially like concerning the women and the girls and stuff. I just don't want to show that in the book, because I think that's exploitative, and basically something I kind of said in my previous video. I think one of 2 things could happen when you do that. One, either you'll turn readers off because they'll just be like, I don't want to read a scene of an assault, or to the opposite, you might turn readers on where they're like, ooh, I'm enjoying this scene of this assault. And that's just like, no, you should not be enjoying this. So for that reason, I don't want to show like graphic stuff about any of this assaults or stuff. So that's like right off the bat, you know, I'm not going to start thinking, oh, okay, well, I need to come up with another chapter. So I guess I'll just do an assault scene, you know. If it comes to that, I would just have this be a shorter act, you know, so I'm not going to show like more assaults just because I need to come up with more material for the act. So yeah. So what I could do though is like here you see Yazidi scene in Sinjar, we meet her family, and then ISIS shows up. So what I can actually do there is kind of expand on that, because there's several characters in that storyline or whatever. So there's the Yazidi girl. She has a brother who I think will get buried alive. She has a sister who is pregnant and will have to get a forced abortion. She has a mother who they'll try to sell her, but then I think no one will buy her. So then they'll probably kill her, even though I don't think you're going to see that happen at all. She also has a father who is taken off into the desert and killed. I think that girl might potentially have a boyfriend, so maybe he'll be one of the ones who are taken off into the desert and killed. And of course, that girl, the Yazidi girl, you know, whoever her sister is pregnant by, whoever like her sister was dating, he may be one of the ones who are taken off into the desert. There's also a young boy who will be in Sinjar who is like hiding out somewhere inside a house. So it says somewhere here, maybe set up later scene with a boy. So there's a boy hiding out. Oh, there's Nibbler, my baby. There's a boy hiding in the town. Like, even though ISIS has taken all the boys and men off and killed them. There's a boy hiding in the city, and an ISIS fighter sees him but does not tell his guys, his buddies or whatever, about the boy. He lets the boy live. So I could set that boy up a little bit. I do not think I want to make him a perspective character, even though I'm going to need more chapters. I don't think I want to have like an entire storyline about that guy or the boy. But what I think I could do is just like in that first chapter with the Yazidi girl, maybe you could see who that boy is. So maybe it's whatever, like the her sister, the Yazidi girl, her sister. Maybe it's her sister's like boyfriends or husbands, whatever, like younger brother or something, you know, or anything. Maybe it's like whoever that girl, the Yazidi girl, likes, if she has a boyfriend, maybe it's her boyfriend's younger brother or something. And that's the boy who's going to be hiding out and will get spotted by ISIS. So yeah, I don't want to have like a separate chapter, a whole storyline about him, but maybe I'll just have something where when you meet this Yazidi girl, maybe you'll like come across that boy somehow. So, you know, maybe she'll see that boy, however old he is, like 10 years old or whatever, like, you know, maybe that boy sees her kissing her boyfriend or something. And maybe they're just like, you know, get out of here, you runt or whatever, you know, because it's just, you know, the boy is annoying them or whatever. So just to kind of set that boy up. So what I could do is, I think I will just write scene introducing the Yazidi girl and the rest of her family / the boy who will be in the later scene. Yeah, I think that's all I really need to say. So I don't think necessarily that I need to have ISIS show up at the end of this scene, because I would kind of like to stretch things out a little bit, you know? So what I think I could do, like if I introduced ISIS at the end of this scene, then like the next scene with them would be ISIS taking over the town, you know, or ISIS begins, you know, killing all the men or whatever. So I think if I can, I would rather not have ISIS show up yet, because presumably right now, ISIS just left Tal Afar, which is still a way to get to Sinjar. You know, I imagine that's probably, you know, half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever. So I think I could avoid having ISIS show up right now. So yeah, Trevor gets word from a Yazidi. Oh, so I think I can delete that for now, even though I have not shown ISIS shows up yet. So I'm just going to write so I don't forget. Oh, what's happening? Things are happening. Darn it. Can I go like, nope. Can I go hacha? Can I go hacha? Okay. I'll just write ISIS shows up at Sinjar. So that way I don't forget that I haven't introduced that yet. So there's this chapter, Trevor gets word from a Yazidi prince in Babira about the situation in Sinjar. That is pretty much repetitive of this. Trevor arrives in Babira and learns more about the situation with the Yazidis. Because originally what was going on here was Trevor was down in Erbil, and then he hears a report about a prince in Babira. It's actually a town right there. And so that was kind of a chapter that would set that up. So Trevor would have to leave Erbil and make his way up to Babira. And then a couple chapters later would be Trevor actually arrives in Babira to meet that guy. But right now, Trevor is actually the Mosul Dam. So Trevor may actually be like potentially in this town like Sam Hale or whatever. So Babira is just, I don't know at all what this may be, like 15 minutes away. So I want to need like one chapter where Trevor is like, oh, I just read in the news about this prince in Babira says something about the Yazidis, so I need to go see him. Because it's so close, I mean, he would just go over there and you'd have that chapter right away. So basically, I don't need these 2 chapters. Trevor gets word from a Yazidi prince. Trevor arrives in Babira. So I think for now I can just delete that chapter. Trevor tries to rally local villages to fight ISIS, but finds little support. That was originally going to be because of the Mosul Dam. He's trying to get fighters to fight there, but that's already happened. The Mosul Dam is already in Kurdish hands, so I don't need that. So just for now, I'll say Trevor returns to the Yazidi royal Babir, but he wouldn't return to the royal in Babira, because originally what was going to happen was, I think he goes to meet the prince, and then I forget exactly what was going to happen, but the prince was going to kind of tell him about the stuff going on in Sinjar. And so Trevor was then going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to go around to all these towns and get some volunteers, because some of these towns are Yazidi towns. So Trevor's like, oh, well, since Yazidis live in this area, I'll go and get them and recruit them, and we'll eventually, make our way to Sinjar. But I don't think that's going to happen, because right now Trevor is with the Kurds, and the US is helping with airstrikes and stuff. So it wouldn't really make as much sense that Trevor would be like, okay, I'm going to go recruit villagers, because why would he recruit villagers when he actually has the Kurdish military, like the Peshmerga or whatever, and the Iraqi military and the US military assisting with airstrikes all around the Mosul Dam? The professional soldiers are already here. So Trevor wouldn't go around to all these villagers trying to recruit people. So that scene just doesn't work anymore. So I'll just say Trevor goes to meet with the Yazidi royal in Babir and finds Haidi. Okay, yeah, because that will at least make that chapter make sense. Again, Trevor arrives in Babira and learns more about this situation. Okay, so yeah, this is something that was going to be, this is out of place. The Mosul Dam, that's already over with. He also learns about ISIS demolishing historical sites. I might still do that, but that's just oh, actually, that was going to be something that was going to set up what was originally going to be Act 3, where in Palmyra, Trevor actually works to, ISIS is destroying historical sites. So in Palmyra, he meets up with Ariel Geller and Skylar Dongan. I'll never get used to saying Skylar Dongan in Palmyra to preserve the historical sites. But now that is not actually going to happen until Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged. Act 1 of Act 1 of Atlantis Dislodged. So that whole storyline about the ISIS destroying historical sites, nothing's going to come of that in this book. So still, maybe the Yazidi prince will mention something like, ISIS is destroying our monuments. And Trevor may just kind of be like, well, we're working on stopping ISIS. So yeah, nothing will really come of that now, but at least maybe there'll be mention of it, but not very prominently. It's not going to be a storyline in this book. Since I already have that, Trevor goes to meet with the Yazidi royal in Babira. I don't need this. And since I know, they're going to talk about the Yazidis and stuff, and the royal may mention about ISIS destroying historical sites, I don't need to put that in the outline. I already know he's going to do that, so I'm just going to delete this just so I don't have to bother with that. Trevor flies a Heidi, that's going to stay. The girl's father, that can stay. Older, blah, 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 that can stay. That can stay. Let's see. Scene introducing the Yazidi girl and when the rest of her family, the boy. So I guess I want to cut to show what Trevor is doing. Trevor would still be at the Mosul Dam. Kurds from Syria are not in the area. The Americans, though, are. But there's no one in the military that Trevor would communicate with, I think. There's no one amongst the Kurds that I think he would communicate with, like Firat Malazada. He is still probably down in Baghdad, so I can't have a scene with Trevor and Firat. So it's kind of a question, what is Trevor currently doing in the Mosul Dam? Trevor is an engineer, so he could theoretically be checking on the dam. But also, there should be actual workers who could do that. So maybe Trevor is kind of supervising some of that, but he could also be working with some of the wounded, like Kurdish fighters and stuff. Like there's the one Kurdish guy who is supposed to get injured. So maybe Trevor can have like a little talky scene with him. I'm not sure really what else can happen though. I guess it doesn't have to be a long chapter because basically it's just reminding readers that Trevor is currently in Mosul and here's what he's doing. He's checking on the dam to make sure, whether that dam does look like it's going to be okay, and also checking on some of the injured fighters and stuff. So I guess that's all I really need Trevor to do because I don't think he needs to do anything really to move the plot at this point. He's still kind of just waiting to hear about the Sinjar stuff. So I'm just going to say Trevor is at the Mosul Dam checking on the safety of the dam and the health of injured Kurdish fighters. And just from the onset, I think that would be a fairly short chapter, but I think that's fine. That's all I need really is just a chapter checking in with Trevor. So then I think I can have another scene. Oh my god. Scene with Yazidi girl. ISIS arrives at Sinjar. So now I can get rid of that. And then create some more space. It's still a little early for Trevor to hear about what's going on with the Yazidis, from the royal. So the royal would not already be saying there's this stuff going on in Sinjar, because most people would not even know that yet. It's just happening just like as we speak. So it wouldn't even remotely be really newsworthy yet. So Trevor would not be meeting with that guy yet. So I'm not sure if there's really anything I could do with Trevor right now. I could do a different chapter, like a perspective, let's see, I could either do a perspective chapter from the girl's father or the girl's boyfriend or anything. I could do it from her sister's husband or something, make them the perspective character. Or I could have it be from the perspective of the ISIS commander, or the guy who will wind up assaulting the girl. They could be the perspective character. But basically what I'm thinking is I could have the scene where the girl's father is shot. I think potentially, just because I need more chapters, the scene with a boy being buried alive could be its own chapter now. So I'll just say brother is buried alive. That could be a separate chapter now. And how I was saying, I don't want to show graphic stuff. This is something I think I will show, that ISIS buries the boy alive, because they really did that. What ISIS did is they buried some boys alive in the Sinjar Mountains, because there's all kinds of religious sites here, religious destination. So what ISIS did is they took a lot of boys up to these areas, these holy sites and stuff, and buried boys alive, because kind of the idea was we defiled your places of worship because now your children are buried here. So it's ha 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 ha. Frickin' ISIS, scum of the earth. So, that really happened, and I think I want to show that. So you'll actually see that happening, where the boys are being buried alive. And I think the mothers and stuff will actually be forced to watch that. Because again, I think that's what ISIS really did. This mountain always looks like something else to me. But the reason I think I'll show that is because it's not as unbearable as women and girls being assaulted. I don't want to show those scenes at all. So I think it's kind of a bit different, showing scenes of boys being buried alive. No one should like those scenes, so it's not nearly as problematic. Whereas scenes with the girls or women being assaulted, there is more danger of people liking those scenes, which I want to avoid. So that's why I kind of feel more comfortable writing the scenes about like the boy being buried alive and stuff, and why I want to avoid any more sensitive stuff about, women and girls. So I don't know if I'm ready to do that scene yet about the girl's father, but I guess I wouldn't know what else to do because I don't think I'm really ready for a scene with Trevor, and there's nothing else going on really that I think I can introduce. I'm not going to have anything with the Americans. I'm not going to have anything with the Prime Minister of Iraq or the Iraqi president or the Kurds or anything. I mean, really, right now, it's just, the Yazidis, ISIS, and Trevor. But Trevor's up here. Like I said, he's doing stuff around the dam. He doesn't have anything to do yet. The Yazidi prince, he doesn't have any like report to give yet because all this stuff is still like presently happening. So I think I can just do a chapter where the Yazidi girl's father is shot, and I'll also say like along with, let's see, who else? Like, I don't know, her sister's, I'll just say husband, maybe her boyfriend. So yeah, maybe it might be the perspective character might be the girl's boyfriend, So you might be thinking, okay, so her boyfriend is going to do something heroic. Her boyfriend is going to save her, he's going to rescue her and her family and stuff from all of this. Or maybe her father's going to save them. Or maybe the sister's husband is going to save them. But no, they're all killed like straight out of the gate. ISIS is like, okay, we don't need these guys for anything. We don't need these young men or these, grown men or anything. So ISIS just kills all these people. That's like the first thing they do. So now it's kind of like, all the women and girls and the young boys are just helpless. They're on their own. So I guess we could have it now where Trevor actually gets word that something is going on in Sinjar. Because, yeah, I mean, it's not like this isn't the days where, like, you need several days to find out about the news. As soon as ISIS was coming, Yazidis may have been calling people saying, like, help, ISIS is on the way. So at least now that prince probably does know that, hey, I'm hearing a lot of stuff that ISIS has arrived at Sinjar. So I think Trevor could go and meet that prince. I just kind of wonder exactly why he would do that. Like, who does he hear it from? Maybe it could be something like that. Instead of Trevor going to Babira, that guy could actually go up to the Mosul Dam because that's where the army is. And so maybe Trevor is like on the outskirts because maybe there's like the humanitarian camp or whatever, or, the injured people or whatever. And so maybe this guy starts approaching and Trevor thinks like maybe this guy is injured or something. So maybe Trevor can question him and that guy could be like, I'm trying to contact the military. I want them to go and help the Yazidis, and Trevor could kind of question like what's going on with the Yazidis. I don't know. But then that also kind of screws up some of my ideas because I really like the idea where Trevor goes to Babira to meet with the guy and he enters the house and Heidi Barnum is already there because she's a journalist who is like interviewing this guy. So I like that. I like that Trevor, that's how he meets Heidi, because otherwise, how would he meet Heidi? Unless Heidi does the same thing, where maybe Heidi maybe she wants to contact the military here to ask them if they could fly her out to Sinjar, but that doesn't really work out because originally it was going to be the prince volunteers to have them take his helicopters to Sinjar. And I was going to say if he's with the military, Trevor can't really just borrow a military helicopter to take Heidi to Sinjar. So I think it would have to be the prince would say like, go ahead, take my helicopter. I guess it would be okay if Trevor went to Babira to meet with that prince, but again, it's just kind of like, why exactly would he do that? I don't know. I don't know which one I like more. Either Trevor going to meet with that guy, or that guy going to try to talk with the Kurds and stuff, with the military. It makes sense, and also to be more proactive, that instead of just waiting for someone like Trevor to go and meet with him, that guy would be trying to contact, the Kurds and the American military and stuff, and saying, hey, please send some people to Sinjar, send the army to Sinjar, they need you there. So I like that guy doing that, but then it's kind of a question of how would Trevor meet with Heidi and Paul, and how would he agree to fly? Trevor agrees to fly a helicopter to Sinjar to photograph what's going on with the Yazidis. How would that happen otherwise? Theoretically, I kind of just got a little idea, is maybe Heidi Barnum is already like here, like doing